Good evening and welcome to the April 10th, 2024 meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. We have a lot of committee meetings tonight. We have a Parks and Recreation Committee meeting, a Finance Committee meeting, a Building and Planning Committee meeting, a Public Works Committee meeting, a Library Committee meeting, a Grants and Community Development Committee meeting, and an Administration and Human Resources Committee meeting all this evening. So we are going to get started with the Parks and Recreation Committee meeting, and I'm going to turn to its chair, Commissioner Gilda Kramer.
Thank you. There are two issues on the agenda for the Parks and Recreation Committee tonight. And the first one is that Parks and Recreation is seeking the Board of Commissioners' direction regarding options to be included in the Ardmore Avenue Community Center and the Palm Center projects in their final design before the completion of construction documents. And I'd like to ask our Director of Parks and Recreation, Donna Heller, to give us a little bit of background on this issue.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is this on? All right, you should be able to hear me a little bit better, although I do rather speak loudly. As this project has developed through the schematic design and design development, we provided an updated cost estimate, which nearly doubled the cost estimate for the projects. So we entered a significant process of creating cost reductions in various elements where we can, while still trying to maintain the programmatic spaces within each facility. Most of the reductions were in square footage for both facilities, trying not to change the programmatic space, but reducing hallways, and one of the rooms in the community center was slightly reduced, but most of the reductions occurred in hallways there, and the removal of a basement space. At the Palm, there was a removal of a second floor interior fire-rated ramp for egress, but there are fire-rated exits for the second floor that remain in the project. I'm going to run through our PowerPoint real quickly so you can kind of see there's not a whole lot of change in the There's not a lot of change from the plans that we showed you prior with regards to the physical appearance of the exterior of the building. This is the facade facing Ardmore Avenue. This is the facade facing the proposed parking lot for the facility. You'll see in the last slide an aerial of where each of the elements are placed on the facility. This is this side facing the interior of the park. And this is the side that would be facing Spring Avenue at the corner of Spring and Ardmore Avenue. This is the first floor interior of the project. It has a full-size interior gymnasium. This will provide an opportunity for the Summer League and the various programs of the community center to be able to be held indoors when there's inclement weather. They're on the exterior of the site. We do retain a full-size basketball court, so this would be the secondary court for their use and also be their rain location for use. The main lobby also doubles as a programming and gathering space. There's a kitchen and gathering area here. The rear of this is a mechanical room. And back here is I believe is this storage? Is our training room, and this is the room that shrunk in some size here. The center of the building is the locker facilities. Fronted here is offices. On this level is the director's space, and adjacent rooms are all programming rooms. The rooms off the gym are for storage as well as maintenance and janitorial services. The two rooms on the back building here that are slightly darker are for exterior restrooms for the outdoor area. That's adjacent to the playground. And these two are also additional storage rooms for the various functions of the facility. The second floor has an open area, I believe it's fronted by glass. Fronted by glass that would overlook the gymnasium floor, as well as an arts and crafts room, the stairs to the first floor, and additional programmatic room space. This is the area here that is being considered one of the ad alternates that's in your packet, would be the green roof area. Additional computer and gaming labs, maker spaces, and some additional staff space on this level. There are 2 unisex toilet facilities on the second floor. This is the exterior of the pool house. Didn't really show the interior because there's not much to it. It's basically a men's and a women's side for a locker room facility. But this shows the facade where the cursor is. This is the facade that's facing the parking lot. This is the facade that's facing towards where the existing tennis courts are. This is facing the pool. And this is the opposite side that would face the adjacent homes. This is the exterior front elevation of the Palm. You can see it's adding a lot of light into the facility. This elevation here is actually what you would see at the street. If you take this line straight over, this is all below grade in the front. The site significantly slopes from front to back. So the front is kind of into the ground below grade, and as you come to the back where the parking is, you become at grade there, and you can kind of see that from the side views. Oh, sorry, went a little too far there. This is the rear facade. Also, that would be experiencing an addition, but we're also bringing in additional natural light, screening off the compressors for the HVAC units. And then there's parking to the rear of this facility. This is the entrance drive here, and this is the exit drive on this side. This is the side elevation of the entrance drive, so you can see how the site slopes and where that frontal elevation kind of changes, so you don't really see the details, but there will be a lot of natural light now coming into the lower level that wasn't occurring before. And this is the side on the exit or egress, and this is where the exit for the emergency fire would occur. There is currently existing a steel fire escape that comes down in this direction on the existing building now. This is the interior of the facility. Currently, the stairs for to get to the second floor are located actually here in the existing building. So this is the pinkish or lighter color is existing footprint. The blue is the additional footprint. So we would be adding fire-rated egress here. Elevators remains where it is, and mechanical room. There's tech space, additional media and IT maker spaces, a lot of small group activity on this floor, and bringing in additional natural light to this area. This first floor is naturally dark because there is no natural light except from the front door coming into this facility. The addition will house 2 unisex bathrooms, also a lobby area, meeting space, as well as a wellness area for programmatic purposes. The second floor, if you've been in there, it's beautiful exposed wood beams on the ceiling. That would remain in this facility, including arts and crafts. Their commercial kitchen remains, as well as restrooms, additional restrooms, and office space occupies the new addition on the second floor. This is the general aerial of the facility, so you can kind of see where everything is. Palm is in this area with parking remaining in the rear. Parking lot adjacent to the front entrance to the Ardmore Avenue Community Center. The pool house, the existing pump house, and then the sports courts on the outside. And there's a garden on the front side a patio that fronts Ardmore Avenue on this side. Let me exit out of here. So in your packet, there are 4 add alternates that will be included in the bid document, so the board does not need to make a decision this evening. These will come back to the board at the time of contract award with the actual cost for your consideration. It includes the splash pad, basically a green roof on the Ardmore Community Center, doing a full array of solar on the Ardmore Avenue Community Center. In the base bid, it's half the array is included in the base bid, as well as phasing the project. And what phasing would allow us to do would be to keep aspects of the facility, of the park, the whole site open at different times, such as the pool or the outdoor courts, trying to keep the existing Ardmore Community Center as it stands now in place as long as possible, so we can keep staff and opportunities running there while the other construction is going on. And then hopefully the idea would be to move staff and some programs over to the Palm Center while the existing AACC gets demolished and the new structure is being finished. So that would help with the phasing aspect of it. The other aspect of phasing helps us with the permitting process. With areas of disturbance, by phasing it, we're able to disturb less earth, which doesn't trigger the permitting requirements for earth disturbance. Joe could probably speak a little bit more to that if necessary. But that's also another key point, which actually has some costs to it that are pretty significant, as well as some time delays to actually acquire those permits. So that's one of the aspects of the phasing. The 2 options we do need direction on this evening are the geothermal system and the possibility of a resiliency hub to consider at this stage, so we can include the appropriate design and plans. We require it now because both of these would require a totally different structural framing plan and different layouts to incorporate, so it's not something that we could bid as an add alternate. And the architects are here, as well as the mechanical engineer is here, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Donna. I'd like to start this off by saying that I've sent a number of questions, and you've given us many answers, and President Sinai also sent a number of questions. Others have all as well. And I guess there are a couple of specific questions I was hoping you could address for us that may answer questions of many people, which is, what exactly are we giving up with the value engineering and with cutting things out and cutting back the scope of this project?
So as I said initially, it's square footage. If I reply to that. So for the AACC floor plan, the square footage is going down by almost 2,000 total square foot from both floors, plus the addition of the basement, which is also 1,980 square feet. And most of that is from hallway. I think it was 2,000 square foot from the training room would encompass that amount of square footage. And the second thing is reducing we had 4 unisex restrooms on the second floor, and we're proposing to reduce that by 2, so there would be 2 unisex restrooms on the second floor, and just generally reconfiguring some of the program space in AACC. The Palm is a reduction of 1,620 square foot total, and that is almost totally encompassed by the fire-rated ramp exiting the second floor.
I know that what's referenced in here is that we have a likelihood of getting 2 additional grants, which would total $6 million, $2 million for one grant and $4 million for the other. What is the likelihood that we would be able to receive those additional grants?
They're both very competitive grants. Where we have a very strong application and we have a shovel-ready or nearly shovel-ready project to meet the deadlines of those grant fundings. So it should be very attractive to the agencies that are soliciting the inquiries for the bids. So, we do have a strong application. I hope to be successful in both.
Now, I understand that there is some change to the exterior of the building, and I know that this is an issue that Commissioner Woodring has raised. Can you tell us how much of the cost savings is attributed to changing the exterior materials on the building?
Architects coming up.
Michael Rohr from GKO Architects. We did check the detail of the estimate that was put together for this meeting just to verify. The materials actually have not changed. We still do in the base bid have metal panels.
Excuse me, can you speak up a little bit, please?
The base bid prices that are shown in the information that Donna put together still do include metal panels on the upper part of the building. There could be an additional savings if you go to an exterior insulated finish system like is on the Palm, will be on the Palm building. There's some question I know that was raised about the suitability of the system like EIFS. It's a much improved system over some of the bad rap it got in the early 2000s. There's a drainage membrane that's added as part of the system, and that was the problem before. It could trap water behind the insulated finish system. So it is a product that is used extensively. On the other hand, if you wish to stay with the metal panels, that is covered by the base bid.
Okay. And that, when you say it's covered by the base bid?
I'm sorry, the base cost estimate that we put together, the numbers that are shown in Donna's literature.
And that's in the packet that we've received?
Correct.
Okay, so that if we were going to change the exterior, then you could save more money, but then it would be a question as to whether or not that's a good idea. Okay.
Correct.
I'm just trying to understand that. And then I do have one additional question for Donna, I guess, which is that our packet suggests that we're planning to bid these 2 different projects separately. What is the reason for bidding them separately?
So we're going to bid it similar to how we've been bidding stream bank projects. We don't know how the numbers are going to come in. Sometimes we do get a discount if the same contractor wants to pursue both. And if the contractors have more specialty and additions versus a full construction, we have the potential to get better bids that way.
Okay. Thank you. Those were my initial questions, and I'd like to throw it open for others. Commissioner Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Donna, first of all, let me thank you for the work your team has done, the committee has done, working with architects. I've been a part of those conversations, so I do appreciate those. I equally appreciate the unknown cost that is now a known cost that has tripled with the economy and the cost piece. And as we're going through this, and now you have a set cost, Can you give us a guesstimated timeline for us to understand the impact of what the calculations you believe that will be between now and potential beginning of construction, for us to have an understanding on what other potential costs increase may be? So we have an understanding on what we may have to, between now and that piece.
I honestly think we're in good shape with what's in your packet. I think there's solid numbers for projections into construction through 2025. So I do think they're strong. I can't tell what the markets are going to do, or the cost of steel versus, those types of things, or certain trades. We were shocked at how much the electrical came in at on the project. So it's very ebb and flow how the various entities are pricing their workmanship.
Yeah, I understand that. You had talked about a reduction with bathrooms. Is there not a requirement for, so the facility is built for a capacity of a certain number. So is there not a requirement for such facilities to have a certain number of bathrooms, so the current ones meet that standard?
Yeah, we actually meet our code on the number of restrooms. We actually meet our code on the building, on both buildings for construction.
So my next question is about the whole piece about the green building certifications. As a township that works with, that is trying to promote sustainability, I know there's budgetary constraints whenever you do those kind of things. When I look at things like the geothermal system, and it talks about the long payback period, 3 years, compared to potential benefits of sustainability. But the other piece is about federal funding adjustments, which would probably be, 18 years or something like that?
Yeah, it comes in about 17 point, I forget what it's in the issue we were seeing, but I believe it was 17.8 on a payback with the federal funding.
So I guess one of the things that's not for you, from my colleagues to think about, is about the potential of, as we talk about sustainability, is that part of the conversation we want to have about continuing some of those elements that are there to be a part of that, and what is the potential long-term benefits if we do not cut back on those things. My next question was about the POM, and you talked about one of the egress ramps. My concern, and I will fully admit that I don't have, even with looking at, have an understanding of it. I know my only concern is, I know in the current POM, one of the major pieces was not having enough opportunities for a ramp access, and I'm just trying to make sure that this cutback is not going to create a problem for the need for that project.
That is a good question that I can address. The ramp was actually added, was not in the original design. It was actually added in working with the director of POM. It turned out to be a very expensive addition to that. But to compensate for that, we are building a brand-new fire-rated stair on the front of the building, and we're improving the stair that's in the building now, so there's a direct way outside. Currently, it does not go directly outside. And we're doing it at the mid-level landing, so it's only a half a flight up to the upper level or half a flight down to the first floor from where the exit is to the exterior. So we definitely will meet all the code requirements for this building and have safe exits.
Yeah, the code was not, I know you're going to meet the code requirements. I just want to make sure, one of the things that we need to make sure we're doing is have the conversations with the people who are going to be active participants in it. And I think that because we're making these changes, and I know when we originally had this few years ago, well, no, I take that back. When there was a plan that came that predates me, one of the complaints was that people felt that folks from Palm didn't have a voice in it. And I know people have had it in the beginning of the conversations. I just want to make sure as we look at things from a technical standpoint, we also include the conversation from a humanistic understanding for the folks who are going to be impacted the most by it. The last question that I have is related to the outside piece. One part is the pool area. Has there been any considerations about reconfiguring to minimizing some of how the pool area looks, the pool house and all that, in order to maintain some of the building aspects?
We did 4 completely different alternatives, one of which included keeping the bathhouse that exists. And in meeting with the committee, development committee for this project, the option that was selected was the first option that was designed, which included a new pool house. There really was not a good way to configure the site without losing something major. Generally, it was courts to keep that bathhouse where it is. So that is why the bathhouse and the pool configuration is shown the way it is.
Thank you both for answering my questions, and thank you for the work you've done so far. Thank you, Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you. President Simon.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. And thank you both for all of this and for the hard work on this. This is, the value engineering stage is an important stage in any project, and so we do this, I think, no matter what the initial bid estimates come in at, right? There's always a point where you say, for various items, is it worth what we would have to spend on them and sort of do that calculation? So let me start by asking a couple of questions in that vein, because I think about, that trade-off, as my colleagues I think rightly have asked, is really in, are we losing, usability or functionality in this stage, and what would it be? And there are just some things I remember from the previous plans I just want to ask you about, because I didn't see them here. And one was when we said we were removing hallway space, which is like, okay, well, there are narrower hallways. But I remember the original plan, there was sort of like a gathering area at the base of the stairs in the Ardmore Avenue Community Center. I just wanted to, that seemed like a nice element. I just wanted to confirm that it still exists, or how that works with the new design.
That does still exist. That extra wide stair at the base where people can sit on that. In fact, we've added one little thing that we didn't think was going to cost a lot, which was from the second floor hallway, we've added a little balcony so that if you have a soloist or you have a lecture and people are sitting on the stairs, they can actually give that presentation from that little balcony that sticks out.
And then another element I remember from the previous designs, I could be misremembering this, but I think I remember this, is that with the basketball courts, there was this feature that almost made them like indoor-outdoor, this wall. And there seem to be bleachers there now, but is that still there? Was that one of the things that had to go? Can you just sort of walk us through that?
Yeah, that was one of the things that did have to go, and it was really because of the topography of the site. The site drops significantly off towards Spring, and there was a 6-foot offset between the courts, so it really didn't make sense. We also, at the same time, were thinking about some comments that we heard about the placement of the playground area. That it would be nice if it was more connected to Ardmore, at that corner of Ardmore and Spring. So that's why that change was made. We still have that court, it's just shifted over slightly.
Okay. And then my third usability question is, let me come back to the 4 bathrooms versus 2 bathrooms for a second. You originally had put in 4 bathrooms for some reason, right? So removing 2 bathrooms, presumably was thought, well, we never needed 4, or never thought we would need 4. So what was the thinking for the original 4, and versus like the 2 that seemed like the certainly acceptable?
Sure. What we had with the last go around was 2 bathrooms that were dedicated for the patrons and 2 bathrooms that were dedicated to the staff. So what we did was started to think about unisex bathrooms. It's still, you can allocate one for the staff and one for patrons. And what we tried to do with those square footage reductions that Donna was talking about was take a little bit of square footage out of each of the rooms coming across. That's why the program elements are still remain the same, even though we took 2,000 square feet out of the building. But it wasn't all in one place. It was really incremental across the floor plan.
Okay. Thank you. And then I guess my last question, I think we do this now, on geothermal and the resiliency hub, right? So for the geothermal, like, just so I understand this, it's a higher initial cost, but there's savings that if we get the the federal money, which seems likely we would, has basically under an 18-year payback. And just so I understand this, the 18-year payback is calculated as we're going to take today's energy costs, and assuming today's energy costs never go up, the thing pays off in 18 years. Is that sort of how that is done?
I'm going to defer to our mechanical engineer to
Okay, if
answer
he's
that.
just nodding his head
Yeah.
back, he doesn't have to come to the podium. Okay, so that helps me a lot. And then can you let me know what a resiliency hub is?
My understanding of a resiliency hub, as it's interpreted with this municipality, is that in the event of an emergency, a storm, something like that, where there would be a loss of power and the public might need a refuge, that this building might become that place of refuge. Obviously, if you have a center like that, you need a generator. And the generator is a pretty expensive item for this building. That's why we have it on that list of decisions that would really be helpful to make now. It would also, we would probably add 2 showers to the locker room area, one for each side of the locker rooms, just so you have that there.
And just to be clear, like the addition of a generator has a lot of cascading effects, right? So then
Yes.
you need a natural gas line, you might need a basement.
Correct.
You need, okay, so you need a
But
bunch of.
we definitely got away from the basement, and part of the reason we had the basement before was twofold. That we also thought we were going to need a pump for the water system, for the sprinkler system, which turns out we don't need, a fire pump. We had the test, the pressure in the water lines tested, and it is adequate for the sprinkler system. So when we didn't have both of those components, we can work with a generator if need be. It's really just the cost of the generator, the gas line, and things like that that's associated. It's in the $250,000 range, as I recall.
Yeah, I think one of the questions I had asked by email, and maybe I can get an answer from the township manager, is, if we're thinking about the cost of making this a resiliency hub, which is, $250,000 or so, it raises the question of, well, where else could we do that in the township for less money, perhaps, which is something that we haven't evaluated. I guess the question is, like, what would the township residents do in the event of a natural hazard, given that we don't have this thing already? And maybe I can ask the township manager what.
I think part of emergency management planning is to identify resources in your community that you can use in the event of a large disaster where you had to house a whole lot of people. And of course, in our plan, we have resources listed. So you think about Lower Merion, we're 24 square miles. So we have 2 high schools, we have multiple middle schools, we have grade schools, we have other township facilities that have space. Our libraries already serve as warming centers, power centers for people whenever power's out and folks want to charge up their devices or get warm. So you have a lot of options. This would be another one if indeed it had power in a power outage. One thing's for sure, that if we had some kind of natural disaster that knocked out the entire 24 square mile township, we don't have enough facilities. I mean, this is not going to add that much additional capacity to actually house that many people. But then again, our outages aren't township wide. They're either spotty around the township where we've had trees down, or they're in a region where something has happened and a certain neighborhood has been knocked out.
Thank you. I think those are my questions, so thank you, Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you. Ernie, I do have before we move on, I just have a follow-up question on that last response. And I've seen over and over again in my neighborhood when we have outages, sometimes and, a block or 2 blocks can be without power for 4 or 5 days. Is there any place that we now have within the township where these residents could go and stay until their power is restored?
Again, it depends on how many, and how many would be willing to go somewhere and basically stay on a cot in the middle of a gymnasium in this case, or stay on a cot in a room in one of the schools. I mean, it really depends on how many we're talking about.
I mean, but do we have anything right now?
We do not.
We don't have any system in place
No.
for places for residents to go. Because many of our residents, I know, have had to go to hotels, and there are some people who can't afford to do that.
But you wouldn't have it here any more than anywhere else, because again, you'd have to go somewhere, rent cots, you'd set them up in the gym, and then you'd have to have people tend to it and man it. So it'd be sort of the same as saying, can we use this school, or can we use this fire station, or can we do this in this library? And it all really does depend upon how many people are on the list, so to speak.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Zeloff.
Thanks, Commissioner Kramer. I want to explore the likelihood of the receipt of the 2 grants that have been identified. We approved a CIP 4 months ago with an estimate of $15 million, and here we are with an estimate that's $22.5 million. It's almost a 50% increase. So thank you very much for the value engineering and scope reduction. That is, to me, essential in this process, and all that's been identified makes sense. But with those scope reductions, we're still looking at an additional $7.5 million cost. Now, $6 million of that's been suggested could come from grants. So I'd first like to hear about the $4 million grant. That's an RACP, which comes from the Commonwealth. Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program Grant. We've already received $2 million.
Correct, yes.
We applied for $6 million. We only got $2 million. So what leads us to believe that we got denied $4 million, we're going to try again to get $4 million? I mean, I'd like to hear, I guess, from Donna and/or Ernie about the likelihood of receipt of that significant grant.
Absolutely. I'll defer to Ernie, other than to say that when Assistant Township Manager Brandon Ford evaluated the website, he noticed that the gap was there. The $4 million was still kind of listed under our project as a gap fund. So we did apply the second round for those additional funds, but Ernie would probably have a lot more insight into the likelihood.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can actually say with any certainty the likelihood. Donna said it before, we have 2 strong applications, but with the RACP program, we've already received a $2 million grant, and are they going to come back to us a second time and give us another $4 million? At times, it depends on the politics and what the legislators and senators push for in the process. So I think we have a strong application in the RACP, and same thing with the DCED money, again, state money, but it'll be a very competitive grant program with communities all across the state seeking money from that program. So it's really hard to say that we're going to be successful with another $6 million in grants for this project, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
What is the expected timing? It sounds like both grant programs both grants have been applied for. So, what's the cycle in terms of awards? What can we expect?
Yeah, RACP really doesn't typically give any answers until after the Commonwealth Financing Authority meets, and typically that's sometime in the summertime, and you get some kind of an answer by fall at some point. So we, at best, will know by late summer to fall for RACP. I don't know if Donna or Brandon have something on the DCED.
Brandon said that it would be August.
August.
Those are also ARP funds through DCED.
Okay.
I know that makes it difficult because we're trying to make decisions here on costs, and we really need this project to get out to bid because of all the other grant money we have in the project, the RACP money, that has to be absolutely committed by December 31st. So we need this project to go to bid. That's why we're trying to make sure that we give our architects and engineers marching orders here and now so that we can get this project to bid, finish the design, get it to bid. We really need to award contracts by sometime in September, because by the time you grant your approval, then we go through the whole process of getting the contracts together, get bonds in place and all of that. Only then can we tell the Treasury that RACP money is all committed.
Do you mean ARP money?
Oh, I'm sorry, I said RACP, yeah,
Yes.
ARP. The
Right.
ARP is our big financing piece,
Right.
obviously, in this project.
Right, we've allocated 13 million of ARP, and perhaps more as we get to the last item in the Finance Committee agenda. And so that's what caused us to need to obligate by the end of the year. All right, so thank you on those, and Commissioner Kramer, I guess I could ask questions about the geothermal now, or is there going to be some presentation or discussion of that?
I think you can go ahead and ask questions at this point.
Okay, so can you talk, Donna, about the likelihood of the federal grant that's identified in the memo from Consolidated Engineers?
Yes, the
400,000 federal grant, the likelihood of receipt of that, which, in the absence of that grant, there's a 53-year payback, which for me is unacceptable. In the award of that grant, there's a payback of 18 years, which is still high, but, could be acceptable. So, I mean, it all hinges on a grant that's, in the memo, is not described at all.
it is.
What's the source and what's the likelihood of receipt in the opinion of those who know about this?
So I'm definitely not the expert on it, but Chris Weldy, our Assistant Finance Director, has applied for the funding for some of our existing projects. He's actually in the middle of it. Basically, the way the reimbursement works is it is the year following the activation of the geothermal. So if we activate the geothermal in 2025, the application would go into 2026 for reimbursement. And talking with Paloma and just doing some general research, it's in the high 90 percentile that the award is given through the program. I'm trying to find the name of it. It is the Inflationary Reduction Act.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have an opinion on the likelihood of the grant, or everybody, all the experts in the room think that makes sense? Donna's response?
It's statutory.
You can just say yes, if that's,
My personal opinion is the likelihood is good with the federal grant. We're working with another municipality right now that just decided to put in a geothermal system, and the only way that was going to make sense for them was taking the IRA grant into account for the same thing, the same type of payback that you're talking about.
Okay.
We're talking about here. I do think it's basically a 30% reduction on the cost of the mechanical system, so it's a very significant amount of money,
Right.
which makes the geothermal affordable at that point.
Okay. So then, I'd like, if you're the expert on geothermal, we have geothermal at the Bala Cynwyd Library. We've had it for 10 or 12 years. We learned last week that there are some issues with it. My understanding of geothermal is that, you pay a lot up front for some annual savings, so shouldn't the lifetime of a geothermal system be significant, far more than 10 or 12 years? And is Bala Cynwyd Library just some normal wear and tear that's normally replaced in the course of maintaining a system? Or is there something more than that?
My experience is that...
And if you could hold the mic closer, that would be really helpful.
Sure. My experience has been that you actually drill more wells than by calculation you need, that it sometimes does happen that a well can not be as effective as when it first goes in. I'd like to add him to, who's a mechanical engineer from Consolidated Engineers, to fill in more detail.
Oh, yes. I'm not familiar with the system that you're referencing there, obviously, but we have to keep in mind there's two basic components of the geothermal system. There's the geothermal wells themselves, and then you have all the equipment indoors, which is very similar to the equipment you would have regardless if you had the geothermal or not, as far as lifespan of compressors and whatnot. The wells, they are wells. It's pipe in the ground. So the lifespan of that it should be very good, you know, barring any kind of disruption for leaks or contamination in the water source or anything, not water source, but the closed loop water system. So I suspect the problem you could be having at the library there is with the indoor units themselves and the compressors, possibly. In those, again, those are going to be very similar to most other HVAC systems that we're looking at there. So in the terms of that portion of the system, you're not really going to see an extended lifespan.
Say that part again.
You're not going to see an extended lifespan on the indoor components. They're very similar in lifespan to other systems.
Got it, okay. But a well can have a 50-year life.
That's what I normally figure as a starting point, 50 years, yeah. Whereas a lot of your traditional heat exchange equipment, you're looking at 20, 30 years.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Commissioner Brennan.
Commissioner Whalen.
Yes, I will just start by saying I'm wildly in favor of this project. Obviously, Donna and I dealt a lot very closely last year when I was in your shoes, Commissioner Kramer, and so I'm very impressed by the work being done and the re-engineering or value engineering of the project. I think that almost all the questions I had have been asked. I would say that I have one resounding disappointment in what's been presented today, and I don't think Donna's going to be surprised. She's smiling over there. I think she knows what's coming. For Lou and Jeremiah, last year I brought up splash pads probably at 8 separate meetings to everybody. More than anybody even knew what they were, why they were so important. I am happy to talk to everybody. This is really not optional to me. I think I made my case last year. This is really mandatory. The only reason, in fact, after the very incredible scale of work and scope of work that Donna agreed to take on to redesign a lot of playgrounds very quickly, the only reason why a splash pad was not included separately in any of those other projects was because it was determined to be a best fit as a pilot project here in Ardmore. There are a lot of reasons for that, both socially for the neighborhood, mainly economically. Before Commissioner Zeloff looks at me and asks about the extra cost, it is significantly cheaper to put it in a splash pad where you already have the plumbing. Here we can easily, this was determined last year again, this is by far the easiest location in the township to kind of take that plumbing from the pool, put it right into a splash pad right outside the pool area. For anyone, I've been jumping to it, assuming everyone knows. For anyone who doesn't know what a splash pad is, it's the kind of soft ground water play area for young kids and toddlers where you're not worried about kids falling into a pool or needing to actually go swimming, but they're just running around and there are different, fountain sprays or something of the sort, and they have very large ones, they have small ones. Philadelphia City Hall has one, actually a very spectacular one right outside that turns into an ice rink at the end of the year. So we're not talking about anything that large. So that is the one issue that I'm looking at here. And again, I saw Donna smiling as soon as I raised my hand. She knew it was coming. To me, that's not really optional. I understand it is an extra cost. The cost that's associated with it here is significantly less than it would have been anywhere else, again, because we already have the infrastructure here. And I would point out that I think Commissioner Zoloff is right, as I'm sure many others on this committee would all think, to look at the dollars and cents, right? This is a lot more expensive. We need to make sure that we're spending in line with our priorities. I believe we are here. I believe that this has been a long time coming for this redesign. I think most of the will of this board has been said over the last year, 2 years, 5 years, saying this is a seminal project for not only Ardmore, but our township. And we maintain a very significant rainy day fund. And when you have a seminal project like this, that's why you maintain that rainy day fund and you tap into those funds if necessary. So I think we do everything we can. I completely agree with the analysis of trying to get all the grants we can and whatnot. But I think we should not skimp or save too much here at the risk of losing, I think what a lot of people have said today, many of the benefits that we might have just to save a few dollars today. And again, splash pad, splash pad, splash pad. Thank you, Commissioner Kramer.
Are there any other questions for Commissioner Woodring?
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. So I'm just going to echo what Commissioner Wayman is saying. The splash pad, so not only is it everything that he explained, but it's also a more equitable approach in terms of providing an alternative pool for from an accessibility standpoint. So some children don't get the ability to enjoy full-scale pool or anything like that. So having that splash pad is a more equitable approach for the community that I would agree must be in this project. And I just want to talk briefly about the value engineering component just from my own professional experience. Just for my colleagues here, I would kind of advise against value engineering the performance or the envelope of the building to something like an EVA system from the metal panel system, assuming that has outbound insulation or, without getting into the techniques of it all. But the moment you start kind of sacrificing building performance is the moment you're starting to add stress on systems like geothermal or PV, upping the requirement for such systems to operate. So I'm all in favor of the geothermal system as well as the PV approach, because I'm confident that with those two systems, we would get this get this building, close to something like a net zero building. Again, I'm not entirely sure in terms of the more in-depth calculations for that, but this could set a nice kind of precedent for the township in terms of sustainable design. But with that also comes making sure we hold strong performance of the actual building itself as well, because you kind of can't have one without the other. I know in my line of work as an architect as well, one of our first focuses is to reduce the energy demand first and then supplement with renewables. And in order to reduce that energy demand, performance of the building is critical. And so that's all about the envelope of the building and its mechanical systems. And so I would just, I know we're looking at much larger numbers than we anticipated, but I would just urge against further value engineering the building to just try to save a couple of dollars, because ultimately that's going to make the geothermal system and the PV system that much more successful. But that's all. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? And I would like to perhaps turn to comments and on the two issues that you have asked for guidance from us on. And those two issues are the questions of geothermal and the idea of turning this into a resiliency hub. And I'd like to start it off by giving my views on this. And the first thing I'd like to say is that I agree completely with what Commissioner Woodring said, which is that we had a low-end project in this location 50-some years ago, more than 50 years ago, and it is really a low-end project, and it's been an embarrassment for this community for many years, the shack. And, it was built, as I understand, as a temporary project, and then it ended up being there for way past its intended life. And I think that this project is something that we are not planning to be a temporary project. It's going to be a long-term amenity for our whole community. And I think we should do it in terms of the construction as a high-end project. And because of that, I think that it's important for us to do geothermal. The geothermal will ultimately, if this is a 50-year or more building, and I certainly hope it'll last more than 50 years, the geothermal will result in significant cost savings as well as sustainability benefits. And I believe that that should be included in the scope of this project. As far as the sustainability hub is concerned, I am concerned that we do not have currently any space, any plans, any arrangement for where people can go if their utilities are knocked out for an extended period of time, or if they are, if there's a flood and they're flooded out of their homes, or for whatever reason. And I think that we ought to have this available. And if we don't have anything else in place right now, I think we should include a resiliency hub at this location. So with that, kicking off that for discussion, I'd like to see if there are any other views on, would you? What?
Do you make a motion?
Oh, do I have to make a motion?
Don't you have to?
I do have to make a motion? Okay. In that case, then, is it just for discussion or are we doing motions?
So,
It's really for direction.
I think it's for direction. I think people are just making comments so they get a sense of the board, so they know what to bring to us.
Okay.
So I don't
All
believe
right.
we're approving anything.
All right, sorry, I'm blaming this on
That's my fault.
Commissioner Courtney.
Stay in your lane.
I got excited to approve stuff.
Kevin,
make
do you
motions without,
do you have opinions?
Mr. Rules and Regulations here.
Clearly it's not, because it's
Do you have opinions on this as well?
Sure, since I'm already talking. Thank you,
Yes.
Commissioner Kramer. I want to echo the sentiments of the rest of the board that's spoken this evening. This is a really exciting project. This is great work. It is sort of transformative for this section of Ardmore. As Commissioner Kramer, it's replacing a structure that is well overdue. This was a project that was attempted before my time on the board and then sort of dropped because we didn't like the report that came back. And it was a great debate to bring this back in. And I just want to recall some of the history here. When we first put this in the CIP, I think it was 2020, I'm trying to remember here, we estimated it at $10 million. Now, we're way over that, but that was $10 million before ARP money. And that was $10 million when we had the same general fund balance of $30 million in the bank, because that never changes. So why I bring this up is because we have since then allocated ARP money to this, and in our next committee meeting, we will have a vote that I hope everyone will agree with to allocate even more ARP money towards this project, as it's very deserving. So I'm going to round up slightly and say ARP is going to cover $15 million of this $25 million project. And my rounding makes this math work out great, because that means the original $10 million that we said we would pay for this when we put it in the CIP is what's left if we take all of the ad alternates, including the geothermal and the Resiliency Center, both of which I support and think are great ideas. So if we thought we were going to spend $10 million 4 years ago, we should stand by that and say we are willing to spend $10 million now to have a project that represents the values of our community and allows us to continue to lead in this region for providing amenities in our township and community services, and also increasing our sustainability overall. Thank you, Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevenson.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. I am in support of both of these, but I'm going to put a couple of cautionary pieces here. The first one with the geothermal piece, I do support those. However, I have dealt with in the history of geothermals in buildings, and the maintenance and the upkeeps and the long-term piece is something that we have to take into account for that. And I would hope as we look at that, we take into account that as we focus on if that's the direction we want to have. As far as hubs, again, I would say that, representing the most densely populated part of the community, I'll be the first one to say, yes, we do need one. However, I would say that I would ask, rather than saying, yes, if we're going to support something, that we come back with more than just say we want to make this a hub, but have a plan. I see our fire chief here who didn't want to be called out, but I mean, who's a prime example of being a part of that conversation, because the work of a designation is one part, but the other pieces of supplies, of cots, and other things, and the plans is a very important key component to this. And the other piece to it is even about boundary pieces. When you think about boundary, people say, we're going to open it up here, and you got people coming from other parts who, so there's a whole lot of pieces there that beyond just designation that I think that I would hope, which I already know you have done, but I'm just vocalizing it to the table. Thank you.
Commissioner Zella.
Thanks, Commissioner Kramer. It looks like we're just going around the horn, so figured I'd go next with your approval. So the history is that the poor feasibility study from many years ago didn't stop the project, it's just delayed it. What's before us is much better. What was shown last time, many years ago, was not workable. In terms of what we're going to do later this evening, it's not going to get us to 15 million in ARP. It hopefully will be the end result after we go through what we have to do by the end of this calendar year, which is obligate all of our ARP funds, and we'll see where we end up. As to the two items that are before us this evening, where management has asked for direction, we have many schools. We have a firehouse up the street. We have a library up the street. We've got 6 of each, 6 libraries, 6 firehouses. We've got lots of independent schools. We have more space for people to go when their power is out than most communities have, is my guess. 13% of our land is institutional. That's a lot of big space. We've got colleges. I mean, we've got many places to go. So I'm not in favor of this new term, resiliency hub, if it's where you go to charge your phone during a power outage. And my experience is that when there are power outages and firehouses are made available for people who need help because their power's out, nobody shows up. And so I don't think we should do that. As to the geothermal, I thought it was a good idea at Bala Cynwyd Library with an 18-year payback. That's, acceptable. And, Don has been persuaded me that we're going to get the federal grant. And now that I know where it comes from, and it's a post, right? We put it in, it runs, and we get the grant. That I understand that. So that's my feedback on the two items before us. Thank you, Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you. President Sani.
You're going around. Okay, so
Yes,
thank you, Commissioner
We're
Kramer.
going
So let me just echo some of the things that some of my colleagues said, which is this is a very important project for the township. This is exactly the kind of amenity we should be in the business of delivering. I want to give, I think, credit where credit is due, since he's not sitting in that chair. I believe the latest round of motion on this got started when Commissioner Bernheim was president, right? We who are on the board right now have the delight and luxury of being able to move forward something that has been extremely well done the whole way along. So it's a pleasure for us, but this is terrific. It's an exciting project. It's an important project. It's a valuable project for the entire township. And the price level of delivering these projects has gone up, right? Has gone up since when we started. But that's just kind of where the world is. It's not like the project has had things added to it and tacked on over time that has inflated the price or the cost. That's not what's happened. It's just gotten more expensive to build things. And that's the world we're living in now. And it's either a project we want to do, in that case, this is how much they cost now, or it's a project we don't want to do. And this is a project that, from my seat, I think we want to do. I think we should want to do and continue to want to do. I really haven't heard other people say differently. So I'm glad we're moving ahead with it. I'm glad we are being thoughtful about how we're doing it and delivering an efficient project that is going to give to the township what it is that we need out of it. So for the other things on the list, geothermal, I concur with Commissioner Zelov that this makes a lot of sense to do at an 18-year payback. The whole point of the Inflation Reduction Act subsidy is to take something that wouldn't be economic and make it economic. And it's glad to hear that that subsidy is working. That's what it's for. We should lead by example here, and we should do geothermal. For the Resiliency Hub, I appreciate the general need for it in the township. At this particular location, it has so many cascading effects on the building that make it so much more expensive to implement. I can't believe that what we need is something that has a dedicated, guaranteed power source that's not cheaper put in a generator somewhere else, right? So we should investigate that, but I don't think we need to do it at this location. And then let me just support what my colleague Commissioner Whalen said about splash pads. I share his view. I'm glad we are going to get to decide on this later when it comes back as an add alternate that I will gladly vote to add, and I'm not sure I need to see the number it comes in at when that happens. I think it's really important. Anyway, thank you everyone for bringing this forward, and I'm delighted to support it.
Are there any other comments?
The other
Commissioner
Kramer?
Kramer. Sounds
Thank
weird
you.
to say that.
I agree with what's been said so far. I support the project and the add-ons. The Resiliency Hub, I think what I would like to see would be that the staff look at other options that are already existing, and maybe we give somebody a generator if we need to. But otherwise I support the add-ons and a Resiliency Hub, just not in this way.
Commissioner Churchill.
I'd just like to comment. One is a cautionary tale about geothermal that I expressed last week, that I have no problem supporting geothermal installation. I just want to make sure that when repairs are needed, that the parts will be available. And just commenting on this community center reminds me when our previous report came out several years ago, and Commissioner Rosenzweig said, we need a new community center, not just any kind, but one that upholds Lower Merion standards. I'm paraphrasing from him, and I think this project reflects that. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Gavin.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. I agree. This is a key project. This is one of the seminal projects in our township. But it doesn't mean we just do anything that's presented, right? We do it right. We do it well. As President Sana said, we're thoughtful about it. And the amenities that this should have are those that add value to the township, whether it's sustainability, whether it's to the users, and therefore the geothermal, as everyone said, seems to make a lot of sense. The Resiliency Hub, again, like others have said, doesn't really make sense. There's not a need for it. It doesn't seem like, that extra cost here really adds value to this project and adds something that this community in this township doesn't already have. So I would not be in favor of that piece of it, but I certainly would for the geothermal part. Thank you.
Commissioner Whalen?
Thank
Have
you,
any
Commissioner
additional
Kramer.
thoughts?
I won't go into already what my thoughts were, but I relatively speak, I think what I'm hearing from most of the people on the board. I'm resoundingly in favor of the geothermal. I think Commissioner Zollif made a great point when asking and delving into the likelihood of getting the grant. If we get that grant, it's really a no-brainer to me. Without that grant, it is a big question. But I think, based on your expertise, I think I'm in favor of that. And Commissioner Sinai said it right. We spend in line with our priorities. We figure out the money after we figure out our priorities. Maybe we can't do all of our priorities, but we spend in line with our priorities, not just because we have money or don't have money, but we make sure we do what we want to do. We want to do this. This is a major project for us and really a flagship project for us. And as far as the Resiliency Hub, I think it's already been said, I'm not in favor of it at this location. I do think we have a lot of schools. I think Ernie said it best as he was kind of laying out the places we can already do this that will already require the same kind of level of upswing. There are already shower facilities and everything like that at these other schools. So yes to geothermal and no to the Resiliency Hub at this location.
Commissioner Woodring, do you have anything to?
So, again, it's not to repeat what everyone had already said, but I echo the same concerns about the Resiliency Hub. I question its capacity in the sense of how many residents it could actually serve, because it's not, whether it is a large project, but, is it large enough to make a difference? I'm not sure I'm convinced from that standpoint in the Resiliency Hub. However, every other ad alternate, in my opinion, is a must. And again, sticking with the base bid, performance of the building itself should stay as well, because that's only going to help enhance some of these ad alternates and make them more worth their money. So I'm in support of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. I think resiliency or emergency, if we haven't discussed it, that might be a topic for future discussions, looking at what we have in place in the township and how we can handle an emergency at a large scale, especially in today's world. But I think discussing it now with this is not necessary. Personally, I think this project is an incredible project. The township needs it, the community needs it. I've been a participant at the Palm, and what it brings to those people that go is something that almost can't be put into words. It's just a beautiful place for them, and it provides a lot for them. So if we can, and the facility right now is terrible. So if we could move forward with it, I think it would be very, very important. Geothermal, I have my skeptical thoughts, but they're my personal ones. I have to yield to the engineers and the designers and the architects to lead us down that path, and over a period of time, hopefully we'll be saving some money.
Commissioner Bernheim, you are the only person who we haven't heard from. Oh, and Commissioner
So I
Grimes.
guess we've reached that point that we come to from time to time, that everything that needs to be stated has been stated. It's just that everyone hasn't said it. So, I would join, wholeheartedly in all of the comments that have been made, and the appreciation of everything that's come forth. And when we get further down the line in, some of these topics and get to drill down on them, a drop further, I look forward to that. But the gestalt which has come out thus far, I'm on board. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Commissioner Kramer.
And last, but certainly not least, Commissioner Grimes, do you have anything to add?
I'm not used to commissioners being singled out for not talking.
Simply giving you an opportunity.
No, I thank you, but I'm going to say what everybody else said. Just noted in the record that way. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess that gives you adequate guidance.
Yes, I appreciate that. I gathered that the geothermal's a go, and the Resiliency Hub is going to be reserved for further discussion in another facility.
I think that's correct. And that takes us to the next issue on the Parks and Recreation agenda, which is to consider adopting or recommending that we adopt a resolution.
Gilda, I'm sorry.
Public comment. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry to the public. Is there any public comment on these issues?
Steve Kimbrough and I are, Nancy Winkler, Ward 12. Steve Kimbrough and I are members of the Environmental Advisory Council, and we had heard there may have been some difficulty getting the geothermal aspect of this project to remain, and we're very thankful that everybody seems to be supportive of the project. We've also submitted some ideas to staff as an alternate way to think about the financing of this and the cost analysis, which I think would actually show to you all that from a budget perspective, comparing the debt service on the cost of the geothermal versus the savings, that you will be, from a budget perspective, actually cash flow positive much faster than 17 years. And I've submitted that analysis using the detailed cash flows that were provided to us related to the Penguin Library. And by way of background, I know you all know I'm on the EAC, but I also spent 35 years as a municipal finance professional, worked for many municipalities, AAA municipalities, and was a managing director for 25 years in public financial management. So I know how to do the analysis. So I think, and the only other comment I would make is that unless you fill the forms out wrong for the IRS to get the 30%, there is no ability for the government to deny it as long as the project's eligible. That's the way the IRA is structured, and I've actually attended training sessions that the IRS has sponsored on this so that I could be confident about it. So I don't think it's I think Lower Merion knows how to fill out those forms. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Jody, anybody online? Okay. Then I think now is perhaps the time that we move on to the second issue on our agenda, which is to recommend to the board to adopt a resolution indicating the new grant identification number and reauthorizing the township manager to execute all documents and agreements, including reimbursement agreements between the township and the DVRPC related to the Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Program reimbursement grant agreement that we currently have for the Parkside Kinwood extension of Kinwood Heritage Trail. Donna, could you please explain this in plain English?
Absolutely. My explanation will be much shorter than the title, since it's the fourth go-round of this resolution. This will be the fourth and final resolution to receive additional grant funds to fully fund this project. Our township commitment is $250,000, which is going to be paid via rec fee for this project, and the DVRBC is funding the remaining balance on the actual bid amount that was received. So this will allow us to recognize the award by PennDOT for the project and be able to start moving this project forward, executing contracts, and having pre-construction meetings to get a schedule on the books. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? No questions. Is there any public comment on this? Nobody online? Nobody here. Okay. In that case, I will move that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners adopting a resolution indicating the new grant identification number and reauthorizing the township manager to execute all documents and agreements, including reimbursement agreements, between the Township of Lower Merion and the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission related to the Transportation Alternatives Set-Aside Program Reimbursement Grant Agreement number R22060003-3 for the Parkside Kinwood extension of the Kinwood Heritage Trail. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. Is there any discussion? No discussion? In that case, then I would call for a vote. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And that concludes the business of the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. So the next committee this evening is the Finance Committee. I call it its chair, Commissioner Zeloff.
Thank you, President Sinai. There are 7 items on tonight's Finance Committee agenda, some of which are awarding contracts. In fact, the first 4 items are for the committee to consider making awards. The first one is for roadway maintenance materials. And for this and all of the items, I'll call on our Chief Financial Officer, Eric Trout.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeloff. This is an annual item you have just about probably every April or May. We generally only receive 1 to 2 bids each year. Glasgow, the one bidder here, is a known vendor. They've won this several times the last couple of years. When you look at the pricing, the unit pricing, you have some detail on that historically. When you look at the unit pricing times at least the estimated quantities, those are only estimates, basically the 2024 pricing would be $523 more than the prior year. So again, we're basically looking at flat costs, at least in these materials, which is very positive. When you look down the bid tab, you'll see there's several stone items that we did not receive bids on. Those would be procured as needed. The quantities of which we need for those are actually quite low, probably not only $4,000 or $5,000 max maybe of any one item, so they'd be below bid threshold. So wherever we can get that material, we can go and get that material from a legal perspective. So all signs point to moving forward and approving this contract.
Thank you, Eric. This is a requirements contract, so it establishes unit pricing, not quantities. And I believe this is all work that would be performed by Public Works in terms of road repair and reconstruction and resurfacing. And I point that out because a week ago, we approved a very large contract of some $3.5 million for a contractor to mill and pave some 18 miles of Township Road. And as we learned shortly after the Finance Committee meeting, Eric told us that that was about double the road milling and paving that was performed in the township in 2023. So this is to supplement that work and to repair roads as needed. So with that, do any committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, do any of the members of the public in the room have any questions or comments? Seeing none, Jody, are there any others? There are not. So I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for annual supply of roadway maintenance materials to Glasgow, Inc., in accordance with the bids received on Thursday, March 14th, 2024, with the recommendation of the Chief Financial Officer and approval of the Director of Public Works in the total bid amount of $693,112.50. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Bernheim. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? There are none. Madam Secretary, that item passes unanimously. The second item for the Finance Committee to consider is for an underground storage tank for gasoline. Eric, can you tell us more?
Yeah, so where this is actually right outside. You could look out the window out there. It's basically halfway in between the lane of parking, which is closest to Lancaster Avenue. You might recall that that area was generally dug up in 2022. We previously had to do some work on updating the gas island, the gas dispenser, and the connection between those to the tank. At that time, it would have been our preference to replace this tank, as it was just about at the end of its useful life. It was installed the year I was born, so that gives you an idea of how long it's been around.
15 years ago.
Yes, not quite. But at that point, 2022, in the midst of supply chain shortages and such, we were told 1 to 3 years to get a tank. It really wasn't anything that we could do in terms of leaving that lot totally torn up and things of that nature. Those kinks in the supply chain have corrected themselves. Now we're being told 2 to 3 months. So we want to proceed and actually get this, this new tank in the ground. You'll see 3 add alternates, which are all recommended, and to just kind of talk about them, A1, at least in terms of the engineer's memo, is to basically do the prep work for any potential future sustainability measures, such as, not guaranteed to be, but such as extra electrical vehicle charging stations in that area. A2, that fuel curb island, when you go past the gas tank, you see it extends probably another, I don't know, 15 or 20 feet. It actually makes for larger vehicles that have to traverse that area more difficult. We're actually going to shorten that to actually make that easier, especially for any larger emergency vehicles that might need to get in. And then A3 is if we are tearing up this lot again, and the lot is close also to needing repaving done. Why not just tear it up one more time instead of 2 more times? So to get the lot paved. We had 3 bids. The low bidder is a known vendor who has done good work for the township in the past. Again, kind of summarizing from the engineer's memo, well, this is over budget. We had multiple bids, and we believe this is the cost and the market, so we recommend moving forward.
Thank you, Eric. So does the budget include the other non-underground storage tank improvements to the parking lot? In other words, you know, that's a significant add alternate of $78,000. Is that included in the budget?
So, yeah, when you look at the engineer's memo, it explains where the funding is coming from for each of those. So this is coming from 3 different CIP projects.
Got it. Okay. It is almost 50% more than the budget, but it does make sense to, seems to me, to make the improvements to the parking lot at the time that there's significant excavation work for this UST, with Ernie's promise that the parking lot will not be excavated for a long, long time, since it just was. Okay, do members of the committee have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Kramer, Commissioner Gilbert-Kramer.
I noticed in this that some of the money for this project is coming from the Sustainability Infrastructure Program, which seems to be somewhat inconsistent with building a gasoline underground storage tank. And I'd like to know how much of it is coming from that, the Sustainability Infrastructure Program, and what it's being used for.
If you just look at the engineer's memo, it basically lines out those add alternates and what they're being used for. So for the sustainability infrastructure, that's really just related to A1, conduits, handholds, and I never can pronounce this word, appurtenances? Appurtenances, yeah, say it 10 times fast.
Okay.
For future work. So again, those are the things that would be dedicated to potential sustainability initiatives. So that is the only piece that would be funded of this project.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Or another way to answer your question, Commissioner Kramer, is that maybe the title to this needs to be expanded. It's more than an underground storage tank. It's parking lot improvements and other improvements looking to the future. Okay, other questions and or comments? How about from anybody in the room? Any questions or comments? Jody, any questions or comments from others? Okay. I will move then that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for public safety building, gasoline underground storage tank replacement, and other important parking lot improvements to the following bidder in accordance with bids received on Thursday, March 21st, 2024, with the recommendation of the Chief Financial Officer, with the approval of the Director of Public Works and Township Engineer, to TTI Environmental, Inc. in the amount of $497,687. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Sean Kramer, Vice President Sean Kramer. A motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed or any abstentions? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, that motion passes unanimously. All right, our third Finance Committee agenda item is to consider awarding a contract for an assessment of the buildings at Harriton House. Eric, can you tell us more?
Yeah, just a couple of points. This is a CIP-funded project. We received 4 proposals, all below budget and all really within about $4,000. So cost not a huge driving factor, at least in this one. Donna Heller and 2 individuals from Harriton Association reviewed those proposals. The top 2 firms were within $500 of each other. The recommendation is for John Milner Architects in the amount of $59,500. I believe that firm has completed some work in another life related to Harriton House, and that's the recommendation. I believe Director Heller is still over my shoulder here, in case you have any specific questions.
Thank you, Eric. I believe that the commissioners debated this budget line item in the 2023 capital budget at the end of 2022. We do have now before us consideration of a assessment of the several buildings that are owned by Harriton Association at Harriton House property, and it is an important step in the process of improving those buildings over time based on the results of this assessment if it is approved. Do commissioners have any questions or comments? Commissioner Woodring.
Thank you, Commissioner Zell. I just want to get an understanding of what's included in the assessment, the cost of, is it like a code analysis, or is it like, sorry, Donna.
It's actually, the end result in the reporting is they want a guiding document for future repairs and improvements to the facility. So they're looking for the condition of the roofs, the various chimneys, the structural engineering of the facilities. Harriton House, 500 Harriton Road is a township-owned facility that the Harriton Association operates for us as the historic structure. There is 4 additional facilities owned by the association on the same property, anywhere from an animal barn to the historic structure. Actually, the barn's probably historic too. It is.
Thank you. So my only other comment would be, I'm glad to see that assessments are being done on township buildings and whatnot, and investment in community centers. And so I just hope that in the near future that my colleagues here would help assist me in supporting an assessment being done on the Belmont Hills Community Center to see what potentially could be done with that facility as well. Thank you, Commissioner Zoloff.
Okay, Donna, before you leave, since it was brought up by Commissioner Woodring, or at least his questions, this assessment is for township-owned property as well as structures owned by Harriton Association?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so it's all structures on what is considered Harriton House property?
Correct.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying that. Harriton Association is making a meaningful contribution to this item, and so seeing no other comments or questions from committee members, are there any members of the public in the room who wish to come forward and comment? Are there any members otherwise, Jody? Seeing none, I'll recommend that the Finance Committee, I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the execution of a professional services contract in the amount of $59,500 with John Milner Architects, Inc. for a conditions assessment for Harriton House and associated structures. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Grimes. The motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, that item passes unanimously. Item 4 on tonight's agenda is for us to consider awarding a contract for a new fire apparatus for the Gladwin Fire Company. Eric?
Yeah, so as you might recall, there was an incident last September where Gladwin's ladder truck was totaled during an inspection. So what we've done is follow the same process that we've done recently for other fire apparatus purchases. We received 2 bids. There really were only 4 potential vendors, and the 2 other vendors had told us during the process that they either didn't think they could meet the needs or didn't have the capacity. Those 2 bids are very close. This really is a much more expensive truck than it was 4, 5, 6 years ago. You look back 5, 6 years ago, these trucks were $1 million, $1.5 million. Now you can see it's $2.4 million. They do have about a 20-year life cycle, so you do get a lot of use out of them, but they do cost a pretty penny. Pierce Apparatus is the low bid. They're a fine vendor. We have multiple different pieces of Pierce Apparatus across the township's various fire companies. We are generally recommending moving forward, especially because in terms of the numbers you see for Pierce Apparatus, that includes a $35,000 savings if the truck is ordered by the end of this month. And then finally, I'll just tee it up for both Commissioner Zeloff and Commissioner Bernheim from the Fire Committee. I know there's multiple emails going around today about the insurance proceeds and how that's going to be handled. So I'm sure you guys will want to talk about that, but if you have any questions, just at least about the bidding process or anything in regards to that, happy to answer them.
Thank you, Eric. So why don't we start with questions or comments from committee members? Commissioner Bernheim?
All right, let me address, if I may, the insurance issue. And, note that we had received a little bit earlier today a very thoughtful letter from the Gladwin Fire Company Chief, Blaine Lease, who's actually in the audience this evening, true to form of his dedication to the fire company and the fire service. So the question that's put forth here is what to do in connection with the insurance proceeds that were received as a result of this fire truck being damaged by a fire. If in the normal course of events we were replacing this truck, the truck would be sold, the proceeds from that sale would then go towards the purchase of the new apparatus pursuant to our apparatus policy. The fact that the truck has been damaged, there have now been insurance proceeds similar to what you might get if your automobile was damaged, and that those proceeds then would now be available to go towards the acquisition of new apparatus. Chief Lease has set forth to us a letter where the Gladwin Fire Company was proposing that some of those proceeds would remain with the fire company for some other projects. One of the projects referenced was even doing something for housing to help recruit and retain volunteer firefighters. I've had the opportunity to speak with Chief Lease, so this is not going to come to a surprise to him, where generally I find his thought process to be spot on. This one we may see a little bit differently, in that the proceeds from the insurance ought to be utilized for the acquisition of the new truck, the same way as if we were just replacing the truck and it had not been damaged. This replaces that as a matter of insurance policy. Now, if within the insurance policy there was funds that were then dedicated not just to the apparatus but to some of the equipment, that would be separate. That would be something that the fire company would then have in order to replace the equipment that was damaged. If that exists, it would be outlined in whatever the insurance company did when they provided the proceeds to the fire company. So what I'm going to do, if I can do it on the front end, if that's all right with you, Commissioner Zeloff, it would be to make a motion that would be as follows. That would be consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for the purchase of a new aerial ladder fire truck for Gladwin Fire Company in the amount of $2.4 million from Pierce Fire Apparatus in accordance with the fire apparatus policy, provided the township receives the insurance proceeds paid as a result of the damage to the ladder truck which is being replaced, excluding any insurance proceeds designated to reimburse the fire company for lost equipment. That is the motion.
I will second the motion. Are there questions on the memo or the motion? Commissioner Gilda Kramer.
Question on the motion. When you use the word equipment at the end, I'm not clear whether you meant that this is fire equipment, that like the other equipment other than the truck?
Yeah, definitely.
Can we clarify it then? Could you perhaps clarify your motion?
The truck itself, the apparatus, the vehicle is one thing. Within the vehicle, there are certain there's assortment of fire equipment that couldn't be appended to it, and that's a fairly long and lengthy list. I don't know that we could, sitting here today, list everything that's there, but the way I phrased it is so that it would be anything that the insurance proceeds designate as reimbursement for the equipment. They would separate that out, so it would be insurance proceeds not identified for the replacement of the vehicle, but replacement of other items which fall under that larger rubric of equipment. Does that help?
Perfectly clear.
President Sinop.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoll. So just questions about the motion. Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim, for making this motion. The first is just I think a small wordsmithing thing. So when you say designated, designated by whom? I think what you mean is like outlined by the insurance company as being reimbursement for apparatus versus equipment.
Well, you're correct, and the way I phrased it was excluding insurance proceeds designated to reimburse the fire company for equipment. The only one who would designate that would be the insurance company.
Okay.
So I mean, if you want, you can add that additional phrase.
Designated by the insurance company or specified. Okay. So that's okay. So
if that's a friendly amendment, I accept it.
That's okay. Thank you. The clarification. So, and then the other is that I guess my understanding from a previous communication with township manager, I think, is that some equipment comes with the truck, like when you buy a truck and some equipment doesn't. And I presume what you mean is reimbursement for equipment that wouldn't come with the apparatus purchase.
Correct.
And do we need to specify that? Or we all get it?
Well, I imagine that we all get it. It's going to be, again, my experience with insurance companies, not that I can say I recall where we've had a fire truck that was damaged and, took a look at, the schedule of distribution that generally comes along with it. But my experience is it will be outlined. And Manager Neal, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the proceeds have already been paid to Gladwin Fire Company, am I correct?
That's my understanding, but Chief Lees is nodding his head yes.
Right. And that it would then identify if there's anything which would be a carve-out along these lines.
Okay. Yeah. So the unreplaced equipment, they can withhold the insurance proceeds to replace.
So they can go ahead and replace that with a new vehicle.
Correct. Thank you for that. And then did you say there's actually questions about the memo now?
Yes.
Well? Okay. So I guess this is for Eric. So I'm struck that a new fire truck costs half as much as a Palm building. It's a lot of money. So we did value engineering on the buildings, and maybe you could just walk me through like what value engineering happens here. And I don't mean like there are only two vendors for the trucks, but what I mean is they're just like with a building, there are things we can include or not include when we kind of like scope it out. Do we have the same thing with fire apparatus about, well, it'd be nice to have this element of a truck, but it's expensive and we can decide where to include that or not?
Yeah, I'll make a few comments and then see if Chief McCoy wants to make any comments. But one of the things that what I've heard from fire department staff over time, which has also driven up the cost of these apparatus, is new fire standards. So those new fire standards come out, And you don't necessarily, you can't value engineer those standards away. Those are the standards. The other thing I think is just, in this case, the size and also the length of the ladder. When you're dealing with such a piece of apparatus of that size and you're needing that much raw materials, as we talked about or have talked about in different past meetings and such around bids and cost increases and things of that nature, it's really just a difficult thing. Now, I know that the chief and his office do work with Chief Lease and go through kind of a process that they make sure that they have a specification that goes out to bid that they are both comfortable with. That, you know, and I'm sure there's some conversations about the must-have versus the nice-to-have, or no, this isn't necessary type thing. But those are kind of my general comments. I'm not sure, looking at them, if they have much else to add.
It's ironic you asked a question. I was reading an article this morning about fire apparatus. Since 2011, fire apparatus has gone up 103%. So what was 1.2 million is now 2.4. What was $1 million, $1.2 million engine today was 500,000 back in 2011. So national standard, it's the unknown, and we can't control the cost. Similar to you probably heard through fleet maintenance and fleet management, the price of dump trucks and cars and police cars, they all just continue to rise and rise and rise. Commissioner Zelf asked a question last year. We brought the 2 engines forward. How are we doing the process? We're doing an RFP with a strict NFPA guideline that follows the NFPA forms, and we outline the trucks as we go. 2025 new standards kick in through NFPA 1900, which is now a brand new motor standard, transmission standard, that we try and get in front of, but there's a $75,000 up cost right there just for new technology going forward. So we try and stay tight like we are. We budgeted 2.7 and change. We're down at 2.4. We've removed some items from the truck, help it make it more an everyday truck, but it's a truck that's going to last 20 years in the township.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you, Commissioner Zelf. Other commissioners with questions or comments on this item? Yes. Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you. What was the insurance payment?
I'm sorry?
What was the insurance payment?
I'll ask our township manager about that.
Yeah, we understand it's in the neighborhood of $1 million, but I don't have the exact figure.
Okay, ballpark. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Rossman.
Wasn't there an original agreement or a letter stating that we were going to get the entire insurance reimbursement towards this truck?
I'll ask our manager on that.
When the board approved the request to move this truck up for an earlier purchase, the understanding was the insurance proceeds would be going towards the new truck.
So now we're changing that?
No.
You made an amendment that's not changing it at all?
Commissioner Bernheim's motion doesn't really change it, except with respect to any lost equipment that is being paid for as a part of that insurance settlement.
And that lost equipment, okay. And there's also equipment that has been recovered, I imagine. Do we have an inventory of that, or is that something that can be fitted into the new apparatus?
The inventory of the lost equipment that the insurer paid for should be on the insurance claim form.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Gilda Kramer.
Do we know the total amount of the insurance payment?
Yeah, that's what I think Commissioner Churchill just asked. It's in the range of $1 million.
Okay.
Getting a nod, yes. Sorry to hijack your...
You just did, but I'll let it go. Don't do it again. Okay. Commissioner Grimes.
So, thank you. So I just want to know, I'm somewhat conflicted on this because I don't disagree with what Commissioner Bernheim has said, but I also had a conversation with Chief Lease myself, and my understanding is that this truck that was destroyed was scheduled to be replaced anyway within a year or two of when this new truck is going to arrive. And also that the insurance recovery is on the higher end of what would have been expected. So arguably, there may be a little extra cash than we had anticipated. So my preference would have been to have more time to consider this. But having said that, I also understand the need for the board to approve this to get the order in. So unless the board chooses to vote down Commissioner Bernheim's motion, which I don't expect it will, I'm not planning on offering any counter proposal other than to say to Gladwin that as this board has done in the past, we will enter when there are requests for additional township funds, like with all the other fire companies, we'll consider them as we've awarded to Gladwin and other companies in the very recent past. So thank you very much.
Okay. Others with questions or comments? So Eric, I have a question. The memo said that payment for the apparatus is due at the time of delivery.
Correct.
So is that 100%?
Yes,
So
there
there's no
are
down
various,
payment.
there are prepayment options, but in assessing those with the township manager, we don't think it's in the best interest of the township. For instance, there's a 100% prepayment option. To give the amount that we would get from a discount for that, we feel is not in the best interest of the township, because us holding on to that money, we're going to make more money in interest over that period than we're going to get in the prepayment options. So especially when you're dealing with an apparatus like this, where I think we're looking at 2.5 years before we get it, we feel it's in the best interest of the township to do the payment upon delivery. And also, if we are able to come to agreement around kind of the insurance issue and place the order by the end of the month, we do get the one benefit of the $35,000 savings by ordering prior to May 1st. So we did assess the prepayment options. We just did not feel that they were financially in the best interest of the township in this case.
I understand on 100%, but so you're saying there's not a requirement for a down payment? There's it's not reasonable to make a prepayment of some kind for some discount?
Again, there are multiple different options.
Yeah.
There was another one, I believe, where you pay for the chassis when the chassis comes in, and then you do something else. But there is no defined, like, we have to give them, 10% of the cost when we sign the contract.
Okay.
No, it's about putting our pen to paper and getting that in, so that way we are next in line for whenever they start building this, and probably within the next year, and then build it out over the following year or so.
So our typical approach and plan is to pay 100% upon delivery.
That's what we have been doing with, I would say, I don't know if it's every single truck that we've bought ourselves. We might have done one where we had a prepayment option where we thought, but generally it's our opinion, or it's been our analysis, that it's in the best interest of the township to pay upon delivery. One of the other things just in this area is there's also been a lot of combinations and of different manufacturers in the fire truck space. That's one of the reasons why we're not getting maybe 5 or 6 bids, because there's not 5 or 6 different companies that make a lot of these fire trucks anymore. So just because of what's been happening in that general marketplace, and because of where we are financially and kind of our overall analysis and preference on it, we just feel like that's in the best interest of the township.
Thanks for that explanation, Eric. Okay, the motion has been made and amended. It has been amended. The motion's been made and seconded. And just to clarify, the motion is essentially contingent. I mean, Commissioner Bernheim's motion used the word provided, but it's contingent on Gladwin Fire Company agreeing. And they, as you all know, sent us a letter that we received today with a different amount on it. So contingent means receipt of, my understanding, it means receipt of a letter that matches the terms of the motion. Commissioner or President or Manager McNeely, I got it right the third time. Is that how you understand the motion?
Yes, you would, with that provision or contingency, you would want to have a letter from Gladwin Fire Company agreeing to that before you make the award next Wednesday.
Thank you for that. So with that, seeing no more questions or comments from committee members, others, Another one from Commissioner Bernheim.
Yeah, thank you very much for the latitude, Commissioner Zeloff, because, Eric, appreciate you pointing out the timing and the savings there of why we need to do this now as opposed to take some time to, quote, study whatever we're going to do. And I think we would come out in the same place. And the point that I neglected to emphasize before, that I asked Commissioner Zeloff permission to do so now, is that if there are any programs, especially the ones such as, referenced Chief Lease in your letter about housing for your firefighters or something like that, bring that forward. You've sat here all night and listened to splash pads. I'm not sure if you saw the number, $430,000 for a splash pad. That gives great fuel for the argument when you come forward for something that's going to help the recruitment and retention for firefighters. If we're looking at that, we might want to look at not just Gladwin, but at the other companies that come forward, anything to help with our fire service. We'll look at that on a situation-by-situation basis. And if it's not from the proceeds out of these insurance, which will go towards the new ladder truck, the comment was made earlier, if there's something of necessity, we'll find a way to go ahead and fund it. So I just wanted to stress that point. Thank you.
Commissioner Churchill.
Quick question. Do we have enough money in our equipment fund to pay for this in 2 years, or do you, Mr. McNeely, do you expect that we'd have to dip into our general fund?
So we don't actually pay the purchase of a fire apparatus out of the equipment fund. They're always a capital expenditure since they're 20-year units.
Okay. I thought it did. I apologize. Thank you.
That's correct. Okay, seeing no other questions or comments, are there any questions or comments from members of the public in the room? Seeing none. Jody, are there any others who wish to comment? Okay. The motion has been made and seconded. Everybody clear on the motion?
This is the amendment.
Well, there is only one motion.
There's only one motion. I didn't make it. Commissioner Bernheim made the motion. It's amended as is what's in our packet, but the motion on the floor tonight is just one motion, unamended. I've seconded it. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that item passes unanimously. Number 5 on tonight's agenda is for the a review of our sanitary sewer fund and the rate for those who pay the sanitary sewer rental as of July 1, 2024. Eric, can you tell us more?
Yes, I will. I'm just waiting to get everything up here. All right. So you have before you a draft ordinance, an issue briefing, and also a presentation. What I'm going to do is kind of run through the presentation. This one is relatively brief, hit some of the high points, and that, I believe, basically will summarize what you have before you in terms of the ordinance that we are asking you to approve for advertisement and what covers in the issue briefing. So we're talking about the sanitary sewer fund tonight. An overview of the fund. It is an enterprise fund. By code, this is what you have to cover. If you look at that second bullet point, all the costs, including debt service and a 10% fund balance. And again, the basis, as you know, for people who've been on the board for several years, is based on water consumption from the prior year. This is just some basic stats and functions of what the Public Works Sanitary Sewer Division covers in terms of how many miles, the 17 pump stations, and how many accounts we have. In terms of when you look at 2024 for this year, projected operating revenues just below 8.6 million. This is a slight decline from the prior year, particularly because we had a large six-figure one-time payment of an old sewer connection lien in 2023. The revenue really is the sewer fund, the sewer rate is really what drives the vast majority of the revenue. The billing amount will fluctuate with water consumption that occurs in the prior year. When you look at it, we have about 70 million gallons that are not billed in terms of credits that are provided, whether they be to institutional users whether they be to homeowners that have irrigation systems or other certain things. That computes to roughly about $315,000. Other revenue in the fund really derived from charges for services. Don't have many connection fees, but sometimes we do. We have had an increase in our revenue from other municipalities where we accept sewage that conveys through Lower Merion and then to the Philadelphia treatment facility. And then investment income, just because of much higher interest rates, that's really been the biggest increase on a percentage basis over the prior years. You see here the sewer fund rental fee of $4.51 has been the same since 2012. The billable consumption that you see here, 1.557, that's in billions of gallons there. That's not a final number. We might be as low as maybe 1.555, maybe we'll as high as 1.559, but that's where we think we're going to end up once we're done with any final little adjustments or final special meter adjustments that we have. So overall, it's down a little bit, but it's not. This is something that happens as you see increases and decreases really are shown over the last 10 years here. From an expenditure perspective, operating expenditures for 2024 are already projected to be lower than what we had budgeted. I also think that they might end up being a little bit even lower than what we have here, just in terms of some staff openings that we have right now in the sewer division. The other major expenses outside of personnel is the treatment costs that we pay to the Philadelphia Water Department. That's about a quarter of our revenues. And then you see the other major categories, debt service, et cetera, that make up what you see on the screen here is about 89% of the fund's expenditures. So when you look at the forecast, we really had a much better 2023 than we anticipated. We thought we were going to run a deficit. We ended up with a small surplus. That's really because on the revenue side, we had the real increase in interest revenue. We had an increase also in the revenue from other municipalities. And then we had that, again, that six-figure sewer connection lien that came through. And then on the expenditure side, our payments to Philadelphia Water Department were a little lower than anticipated. We actually had just from an oddity perspective, a real amount of staff openings last year. At one point, I think we were down 4 people at one time in the sewer division. So that does, we definitely had some increase in overtime, but we had some savings in terms of full-time personnel costs. So we do anticipate those expenditures are going to rise a little bit more in 2024. Again, maybe we'll come in 9.3 to 9.4, but we do expect that we will be reducing that fund balance in 2024. However, it will remain a decent amount above the fund balance of 10%. When you look at where this fee is, Lower Merion sewer rate will remain the lowest in the area of any municipality that charges based upon straight consumption. And a lot of the other municipalities that you see on here have really increased their rates. Just for example, keep this note, Radnor's rate in 2016 was $5.90. Newtown's rate in 2016 was $6.07, $6.07. So again, the average single-family dwelling in Lower Merion pays about $250 a year for a sewer bill. Or about $21 a month. You compare that to your water bill, it sounds like a pretty good deal to me. And then in terms of next steps, so what the board will do next week is approve the advertisement of the ordinance. Whether or not you are changing the sewer rate, you still have to pass an ordinance each year in accordance with the code. There will then have to be a public hearing on that ordinance, an adoption of that ordinance on May 15th. And then the sewer bills will be set to arrive in customers' mailboxes around June 1st of this year. So with that, I'd be happy to, hopefully that generally covers what's before you and what you see in the ordinance and the issue briefing. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Eric, and I didn't explain it clearly in my remarks. The calendar year is the fiscal year for the sewer fund. It is not a July 1st start. The delay is that we're doing this in April because we've just got the data from Aqua.
Yeah, we get the data from Aqua in February, early March, and then it has to be loaded into our system. And then what we're also doing is anyone who might have a special meter or deduct meter, they get a mailing generally in January, and then they have to reply to that by February. So then we're getting all of that information either via the mail or via our online form that people can fill that out, and then putting that into the system and such, and then QCing it, making sure everything makes sense when we come to you here in March and April.
Right, thanks for explaining that. And as you said, the bills will arrive roughly June 1st, but it's for the fiscal year we're already in.
Correct.
But it's using data from last calendar year that comes from Aqua. So, thank you for the very detailed slide deck and presentation. Are there any questions or comments on this item from any committee members? President Sinai.
So just briefly, Eric, and I don't want to make too much of a deal of this, because unlike the the general fund, when we deal with that, the water usage seems pretty predictable, and so you have a pretty mechanical relation between what you set the rate at and what we collect.
Yeah, you don't have quite the same collection rate that you will with property taxes, with sewer bills. There is a higher propensity, since those are not something that are escrowed and paid by mortgage companies. We still have a very high collection rate, but you won't see the 97 or 98% that you see with our property taxes. But generally, yes, the consumption can fluctuate a little bit year to year. We saw that during COVID. There's, sometimes if you have a really wet year, a really dry year, that can fluctuate the consumption, but generally it stays relatively stable. You might see more connections, but then it's usually offset by the fact that you have more water-efficient appliances and things of that nature over time.
Okay, and you don't have those big sources of uncertainty like business taxes and transfer taxes and
stuff?
stuff?
Nothing of that nature.
So I guess my question is just in terms of targeting the fund balance in the glide path to a more appropriate fund balance level. Like I guess I would have imagined that you would have said, well, we made about whatever it is, 896 in revenues last year. We should set the rate so we get kind of around that level of revenues this year, so we're at least revenue constant from the previous year. We think expenses will be higher. That kind of splits the difference, and we would be, instead of 10% deficit, we'd be 5% deficit. So why did you target keeping the rate the same?
Well, in terms of, what the code says is the rate has to be enough to establish those three things: the payment of the services, the debt service, and the 10% fund balance. In terms of why the change between kind of last year's revenues and 2024, again, you're talking about a $300,000 approximately that we got on that sewer connection lien that was decades old. So that's a one-time thing that came on. That wasn't, last year we were maybe we were 8.6 to 8.7 in terms of revenues. We just had that happen, and then obviously interest rates, and we had higher cash to invest. So then the interest earnings were much higher, and we had higher payments from one of the municipalities that Radnor conveys sewage through the township, and they have to pay a charge for that. Actually, when they increase their fee like they've been doing, that means that then when we bill them, they pay a higher fee as well. So there's other things that happened last year which kind of brought that up. In terms of the glide path, what I would recommend generally to the board is, you want to see that number actually come down. Last year we projected it to come down to about 16 or 17%, and it basically stayed at 25 or 26. We've been in the 20 to 30% range since 2020. I think, where this is heading is, say you have a reduction and you end up with a 17 or 18% fund balance at the end of next year. And say you kind of are on that same glide path, and then you're going to come maybe down to 8 or 9%. You're going to look at some sort of a sewer fee increase at that point. The code is pretty clear that, you have to pay the costs of the service, the debt service, and have that fund balance buffer. Unless you change the code, that's what you're bound to do. In terms of just generally, I did run some brief calculations. About a 6% increase in the rate would generate about $435,000 based on this year's consumption, and about a 10% increase would generate about $740,000. We don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what's going to occur throughout the year. So we don't know what might happen amongst personnel and the openings we have. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen in terms of interest rates and the revenue that we get news that even struck today makes it more likely that, interest rates are probably going to stay where they are for longer, which is probably going to mean that our interest estimates are probably going to end up being a little bit low this year as well. So I would generally recommend that the board kind of stay the path and see where this year leads, and then go from there. I think if we were looking at a forecast that showed more in the 9 to 12% range, I think you'd more want to think about options around the rate. Where we are right now, I don't think it's necessary for the board to consider that, but it is something you should be thinking about in the years to come, especially a coming attraction 2027, the agreement between the township and Philadelphia Water Department, a 35-year agreement, needs to be renewed. How that renewal goes is going to have a pretty large impact, if it is significant in either way, in terms of the finances of the sanitary sewer fund going forward. So sorry that's a elongated, elaborate explanation, but hopefully it gives you a little comfort and answers your question.
So just for the record, you don't have to apologize for elongated, elaborate financial explanations of me. Like I certainly appreciate it. So but yeah, I appreciate that very much. And I think given the lack of your volatility in these numbers, you are comfortable with a thinner fund balance. Thank you, Commissioner Zell.
That was a great explanation, Eric.
Yeah.
Other commissioners with questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, are there any members of the public with us this evening who have any questions or comments? Seeing none, Jody is shaking her head that there's no other place that questions or comments would come from. So I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise notice of a public hearing and intent to adopt an ordinance enacted pursuant to the Code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 126, Sewers, fixing the amount of the annual sanitary sewer rental fee and establishing the amount of $4.51 as the charge to each property connected to the township sanitary sewer system for each 1,000 gallons of water consumed, and fixing the amount of the annual sanitary sewer rental fee for each property directly connected to the City of Philadelphia sanitary sewer system as that amount charged by the City of Philadelphia for such service. Do I have a second? I do, from Vice President Sean Kramer. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, item number 6 on tonight's agenda has been previewed in the prior Parks Committee. That's for this committee to consider a reallocation of American Rescue Plan funds, all of which have been previously allocated, but we can reallocate if we choose, and that's what's before us this evening. Eric, can you tell us more?
Yeah, so I'm just going to hit a few of the high points from the memo here. So again, what we're proposing is generally there's $1 million in ARP that funding that was previously dedicated to Kinwich Heritage Trail and affordable housing for a project that subsequently has been determined it's no longer feasible. We're looking to reallocate those dollars to the Ardmore House expansion project, which obviously also gets to the general goal of affordable housing throughout the township. We're looking to reallocate about $440,000 in ARP previously dedicated to the capital improvements on East Levering Mill Road, because that bid came in much lower than anticipated, and we got a $200,000 PADCED grant to support that project. Those funds would be split in two ways. The board has previously approved the general contracts for two vendors who have done ARP kind of consulting program management support. One of them has already finished, was very minor, under $10,000. One of them is still ongoing. That's regarding the Vitality grants. That's a not to exceed amount. We expect it would be lower, and then any balance would go towards the Ardmore Avenue Community Center project that was discussed earlier this evening. And then finally, this is the third time that we've discussed and then kind of brought to the board for kind of codification in the minutes and such, how we're allocating ARP. As township manager spoke about earlier, we're getting kind of close to the end point where these dollars not only have to be allocated, but they have to be obligated by the end of the year. So we're looking basically to kind of set up something so the board can provide direction so that if there is any project, a stormwater project, another park project that already is slated to receive ARP dollars, say that bid comes in low, or as we talked about just with the sewer fund, we have additional interest earnings on the ARP dollars, which I absolutely anticipate we will have because we haven't been able to spend some of those dollars as quickly as possible because you haven't seen some of the projects come before you for approval through bid yet. Any of those sort of situations, we would again dedicate towards the Ardmore Avenue Community Center Palm project. We want to do that so that way there's not an agenda item every, when you get to July and September and October, every single month. Oh, we have $17,000 more dollars in ARP than we anticipated. What do you want to do with it? We basically want to set up a process so that hopefully we don't have to have this conversation anymore. And that way we can focus on pushing those projects forward, getting them to bid, getting them before you to approve, getting the contracts executed, meeting the definition of obligation under the Treasury guidance by the end of this year. So that's generally the scope of this. Hopefully that makes sense, and happy to answer any questions.
It does make sense, Eric. Thank you very much for the explanation, and Uri and Eric for presenting this proposal before us, because it, just as Eric said, would enable management to be able to move forward without this having to come into public meetings between now and the end of the year when we have a hard deadline of obligating funds. So with that, do any committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, do any members of the public with us this evening have any questions or comments? Jody, there are no others. Okay, now pay attention to what I say in the motion, because it will not read precisely as what's in front of you. On line 3, it says Ashbridge House, and it means Ardmore House. So I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a reallocation of American Rescue Plan funding as follows. $1 million in ARP funding previously dedicated to Kinwood Heritage Trail / affordable housing to the Ardmore House Expansion Project, Job 4097. $440,000 in ARP funding previously dedicated to East Levering Mill Road improvements, Job 4236, to fund a maximum of $80,000 in consulting services related to the ARP program administration, and the balance of these funds, along with any additional interest earnings or other available ARP funds, to support the Ardmore Avenue Community Center / Palm project, Job 4508. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Courtney. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? No abstentions. Madam Secretary, that passes unanimously. Okay, we're down to the last item on the Finance Committee, and it is a report from our Chief Financial Officer. It is for information only. Eric, the floor is yours.
Okay. Up here. So I'm just going to cover a couple of topics here tonight. Brief updates on debt and funding the capital improvement program, kind of a coming attraction, getting some things out of the way before the June CIP workshop, and then just an update on one of the pilot projects we've been working on in terms of business taxes and modernizing that process. So in terms of where we've been from an outstanding debt perspective, you can see that over time, the township has been able to reduce the amount of outstanding debt it has. That's for both general purposes and for the sewer fund. These are combined numbers. So currently we have the lowest overall outstanding debt since the mid-2000s, and debt service as a percentage of the general fund budget is the lowest it's been in over decades. Really what's been helping us is the use of that ARP funds in the last year or so. There's still about $2.6 million remaining of those 2022 bond proceeds. And analogy I would give you to think about with that is think about a bathtub that's kind of, has a little bit of water left in it. Every week or so we're paying AP and paying capital projects, and there's a little bit that comes out. However, you're also turning on the faucet and adding in some water because you're getting reimbursements from the ARP program. You're getting reimbursements from utility contributions, which you talked about last week, from the paving program. You're getting contributions from liquid fuels and such. So that balance and that number is declining very, very slowly because we have these other sources. And again, we still have roughly just about $22 million in capital investments still to go with the ARP funds to be spent by the end of 2026, assuming everything will get obligated by the end of this calendar year. One thing I just want to kind of point out in terms of debt and where we are is, not surprising to anyone who follows any of the financial news, is interest rates have risen significantly in the last several years. So what this chart below here shows is just 10-year Treasury rates since 2020. When we borrow, we don't borrow based upon this kind of rate structure. We borrow based upon the AAA MMD or municipal market data. That's not something that's publicly available, and the 10-year Treasury and how it moves is a good kind of anecdote. If we're issuing a bond and we're 2 weeks out, I'm watching how this is moving to see if our pricing is getting better or worse. So what you have here, where you see these highlighted circles, this was our issuance in June of 2020. This was our issuance in March of 2022. So hindsight being 2020 and still being undefeated, we did pretty well in terms of timing the market and that. It's much more expensive now if you were to go and borrow. At last check, even today, again with economic conditions, that the 10-year Treasury was up to 4.5. So you're in a different kind of borrowing environment compared to where we've been in the last several years. And why that's important is even if interest rates can begin to decline later this year, it's likely that if you were to go and do a new money borrowing, it's going to be more expensive, at least on the interest side, than your recent bond sales. Based on current general fund balancing levels, which myself and Mr. Weldy spoke to you about in March, it may be something that the board wants to consider later on in this year, using some portion of the general fund balance to delay the need to issue new money debt. That also, as we also talked about in that report, might be something that you want to look at the solid waste fund. So to kind of give you an analogy, if you recall that meeting, we talked about basically we performed about $3 million better in the general fund than we had anticipated, than we had estimated. So if you use that number, just say $3 million for the sake of argument, that could be used for either of those purposes, and generally where you actually had your budget projections in terms of fund balance at the end of the year, if your revenues and expenditures lined up, you'd be in the same exact place. Because basically you're taking that really good, strong fourth quarter that you had of the year and basically using it for those purposes. So that's just something for you to keep in mind. And another thing is, even if you use some of the general fund dollars to pay for capital projects, that is also something that in the future can be reimbursed. We've done that before. You can just add a paragraph in your initial bond ordinance or parameters resolution that basically says you're going to reimburse the previous general fund expenses which were for capital projects. Again, it's something we've done in the past. It's standard operating procedure, so it can be done. And again, that weighting might have a financial benefit to the township if interest rates do at some point in the second half of the year tend to decline. The one other piece on here I have is about one potential bond refunding, or if you just think of that for newer members of the board, it's like refinancing your house in terms of trading in higher interest rate debt for lower interest rate debt. There is one issuance out there that is open and is able to be refunded now. It's basically open now until the end of the issuance. Basically, after 5 years, the window opens and it doesn't close. In terms of the financials on it, in and of itself, I would not recommend that we go and do this right away, because the savings aren't that great, and generally we look for something that's going to exceed 3% of NPV or net present value if we're going to do a debt issuance. A debt issuance doesn't happen overnight. There are lots of debt issuance costs that you have, but it's something that is worth watching, and in the future might be worth combining with a new money issuance where you then spread those costs of issuance across a wider platform, because also overall, that refinancing would probably increase in value in terms of its savings would go up if interest rates do go down later in the year. So those are just a couple of different topics related to debt to kind of prime the pump for May and June when you start hearing about the CIP workshop. And then one final note, April 15th is upon us. That is the deadline for filing your annual business taxes. We have been looking for several years for cost-effective way to move into and modernize our tax filing process. Earlier this year, we implemented a program that allows online filing and ACH payment of business privilege and mercantile taxes. We really were fortunate. There was a tax collection bureau out in central Pennsylvania, York and Adams County, that kind of created this platform with an IT company that then started basically opening up their platform for local business tax collection to other municipalities. So like Williamsport uses it, some other places use it, and we started to use that on a pilot basis for business privilege taxes this year. Definitely had some hiccups along the way. You always do with any sort of IT implementation, but we've completed this first part of the process, and our plan is then, as we move forward, we're going to publicize this even more. It is on our website, but publicize it more to businesses and individual taxpayers. It was in, if you got the April newsletter, it was there. And so far, we've already, as of April 3rd, we had about 150 tax returns filed, and people paid via ACH about $181,000. So we're going to continue to evaluate this and hopefully expand it in the future. I know a couple commissioners have asked me over the last several years about the business license process. That's something that we've talked about internally, and we might have a solution for it. It probably won't be through this process just because of, again, some of the IT nature of it, but might be something that we might be able to do going forward. So, we'll always continue to try to modernize and improve things and make things a little bit easier for the business taxpayers in the township. Happy to answer any questions you might have on this or the earlier topic regarding debt and CIP financing.
Thank you very much, Eric, for the improvements to business tax filing to make it easy for those many businesses that file with the township. Eric, with regard to our debt, what would be your more or less rough idea or estimate if the bathtub started to go down, the water level, and we did not make a fund balance transfer? When do you think we would need to go to the market to borrow, to issue new debt?
I would generally guess and stress that it's a guess, late third, fourth quarter of the year. But again, you would be completely within your, from a board perspective, from a staff management perspective, staff will continue to pay the bills and use that general fund balance we already have. You don't have to necessarily create a transfer right at that point. In terms of the way the calendar falls, it actually might be wise because, when you come to kind of budget time, October, November, that would be a time where we would really have a good idea of what sort of, how much cash, if any, is left, what would be needed through the rest of the year, considering how many ARP projects are ongoing, and then to make a recommendation to the board about that. But again, you could also take the approach of, we don't want to transfer any dollars, but, we're going to keep a running tab of how much the general fund is paying for the capital projects fund, and it ends up being, $1.2 million. You can issue debt in the first quarter of 2025, it would be, and then basically reimburse that amount. That's completely legal and something that the township would be able to do.
Thank you for that and for this, your presentation, because that gives us some guidelines as we move forward in this year and we keep our eye on interest rates. Do committee members have any questions or comments for Eric? Commissioner Grimes.
Yes, I just want to make a quick comment because I'm one of the commissioners who has asked probably repeatedly about getting things online. I am one of the 150 business people who paid their township tax online this year. It was a very easy process that even I could do it. And so I thank you for getting that online, and I look forward to it expanding over.
We'll say I did see your ACH payment, and I didn't hear any complaints, and it's nice to hear that positive feedback. There were a couple other commissioners and other people who we passed along information to, so we all internally, several of us looked at the I looked through it and said, you know what, generally, it's not that much different than TurboTax. It says, put it in these lines, calculates it, and then you make your payment. So hopefully others will find it, and it will make our process going forward more efficient. So I appreciate the feedback.
Thank you. Other committee members with questions or comments? Seeing none, do any members of the public with us this evening have any questions or comments? That concludes tonight's Finance Committee. Eric, I want to thank you for your presentations this evening and for your many presentations to the Finance Committee and to the Board of Commissioners for many years. President Sinai, that concludes the Finance Committee this evening.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Zoloff. So we are through 2 of the 7 committee meetings for this evening. We will turn to the Building and Planning Committee, and I'll recognize its chair, Commissioner Grimes.
Great, thank you. Building and Planning has 3 items tonight, which I'm hesitant to say, but will probably go faster than people expect. The first is the escrow releases. There are 2 of them. Would any commissioners like them considered individually? Seeing none, I'm going to move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to release funds held in escrow as improvement guarantees in accordance with Section 135-7 of the Township Code for the following: 515 to 519 South Woodbine Avenue, escrow release number 4 for $8,700, and 133 Old Gulf Road, escrow release number 7 for $14,520. There's a second from Commissioner Gavrin. Any commissioner questions, comments? Any public comment? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. The next are the certificates of appropriateness, which are on page 9. We have 5 of them tonight. Are there any which any commissioners would like to hear discussed individually? Seeing no one. I will then recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following certificates of appropriateness as recommended by the Historical Architectural Review Board at the meeting held April 2nd, 2024. 8 Cricket Avenue, Ardmore Commercial Historic District 24-04, approval to install a projecting sign to hang from a bracket with the sign to be reduced if necessary to meet zoning regulations, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard 9. 9 West Lancaster Avenue, Ardmore Commercial Historic District 24-05, approval to remove an awning and install a wall sign above the storefront windows, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard 9. 21 Cricket Avenue, Ardmore Commercial Historic District 24-06, approval to renovate the facade, including replacement of sconces at the main entrance and replacement of window trim with a composite material, with a subcommittee to review trim material samples. 45 East Lancaster Avenue, Ardmore Commercial Historic District 24-07, approval to attach a series of painted panels onto the unpainted brick wall surface of the west facade with the outdoor grade plywood panels to be primed on both sides and sealed for protection and installed at a half-inch offset from the wall with interior-grade masonry anchors, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard 9. And 56 East Lancaster Avenue, Ardmore Commercial Historic District 24-08, approval to replace 5 second-floor windows, repair damaged limestone blocks on the facade, and repair the apartment entrance doors, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard 9. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Gavrin. Any commissioner questions, comments on any of these? Seeing none. Any public comment on any of these matters? Anyone online? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thanks. So we're now moving on to the Historical Commission applications on page 20 of the agenda. There are 2 of them, and there are 3 of them. So let's start with the first one. Is the 1850 West Montgomery Avenue in Villanova. Would anyone like to hear a discussion from Greg Pritchard on this application? So, seeing none, I will.
Don't take it personal.
I'm sorry?
I said, don't take it personal.
No, well, he's about to, his streak is about to run out. So I will move to recommend the Board of Commissioners approval of the following applications approval of the following application is recommended by the Historical Commission at the meeting held on March 25, 2024, 1850 West Montgomery Avenue, Villanova, Class 2, number 2023-R-22. Approval to modify a previously approved garage design, including the inclusion of an arch-top window on the south elevation and modification of the vehicular door openings to have arch tops, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10. Thank you for the second, Commissioner Gavrin. Any commissioner questions, comments? Seeing none, any public comment on this matter? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. The next at 223 North Highland Avenue, I am going to move to postpone this application until the Building and Planning meeting next month. Before I make the motion, the reason is because this application is in the conditional use hearing process now, and staff has suggested that we consider both the Historical Commission and the conditional use recommendation at the same time, so we don't duplicate efforts. And obviously, since we're waiting for conditional use, it doesn't delay the application at all. So I am going to move to postpone the consideration of the Historical Commission's recommendation for 223 North Highland Avenue, Marion Station, Class 2, number 2024-R-2, until the May Building and Planning meeting. There's a second. Thank you, Commissioner Gafford. I don't know that we take discussion on these motions, but if anyone
Well, it's to a
does.
date certain, so you could.
Well,
but-
do you know what the date is?
8th.
May 8th. Thank you. I knew somehow I knew someone was going to say that. I should have just given you the date. Okay, so I'll amend my motion so it's till May 8th, and I'll consider that a friendly amendment. We will take a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Now, having said that, we've been asked to have Greg give a short presentation on the Historical Commission aspects of this application.
Yeah, I can briefly do that. And Commissioners, the reason for this, that this is on your agenda this evening, the Historical Commission recommendation, is because there is a 30-day time frame between Historical Commission recommendation and Board of Commissioners review. So even though there won't be a vote tonight, we feel we've fulfilled that requirement by simply having it on your agenda. So I'll share my screen here. And just briefly give you an overview of this proposed addition. First of all, the structure has had multiple additions over the years. The historic resource, which is an old mansion, is outlined in red on this plan. The proposed addition is an extension of another previous addition. It is the yellow area at the bottom of the screen. So it does not directly adjoin or abut the historic portion of the building. Here are some 3D renderings showing what that would look like before and after. So on top is the existing conditions, below is the same angle with this proposed addition. And some elevations showing the scale and placement of this proposed addition. So again, the Commission recommended approval.
Okay. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments for Greg on this, the historical aspects of this application? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on. The next application is actually, I'm going to handle this one a little differently, but I am also going to make a motion to postpone this application until May 8th. Because this is for 10 Monument Road in Bala Cynwyd. I believe it's for similar reason. Yes, for similar reasons as Greg explained with the other one. So actually, I'm going to do it the same way. I'm going to make the motion to postpone, and then Greg is going to give a presentation. So I will move to recommend, I will move to postpone consideration of the Historical Commission's recommendation for 10 Monument Road, Ballackinwood, the WCAU Building Class 2 2024-R-04 to the Building and Planning Committee meeting on May 8th. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. We will take, we okay? Okay.
I believe so.
We will take a vote on the motion to postpone. Do you have a question?
I
on
do.
this?
Commissioner Grimes, I didn't hear the explanation as to why this should be postponed.
Well, because there's, why don't you explain it since you were doing it?
My understanding is there are multiple other issues regarding this bridge that will be on the May 8th agenda. But again, we needed to send the Historical Commission's recommendation to you this month to meet the timeline requirements.
And what is the applicant's view of this postponement, proposed postponement?
Well, the applicant is here, their attorney is here. I think, well, I'll let Chris explain it.
The issue is this is a bridge that spans Monument Road. So the Historic Commission made recommendations on the architectural appropriateness of the bridge, but the bridge to actually exist requires a right-of-way agreement with the township. That agreement hasn't been finalized between the applicant and the township solicitor. We need to bring the entire package to you together next week, so you could look at that.
I mean, we could approve this tonight. I mean, it doesn't go anywhere without a right-of-way agreement, so that could happen in due course.
Correct.
Is there any are there any other issues?
No, there are no other issues.
And does the applicant find a postponement to be acceptable?
They are. They've been informed of our plans.
I'm sorry?
They've been informed of our plans and that we've intended to bring the entire package together next month.
And they have indicated to staff that your plan is acceptable?
Correct.
Okay.
I also believe, in my opinion, because when this was posed to me, that we might do it this way, there are some concerns commissioners have with the Historic Commission application, including I had a question or two, which they can be brought up next month. The other thing is because of the other lengthy agenda items we still have to do tonight, the thought was if we can, I understand next month's B&P is anticipated to be a much, or the next month's committee meetings will be much shorter, fewer items. So it's because there's no prejudice to the applicant. That's why I was willing to make that motion.
Okay. On the basis of staff's representation that this is okay with the applicant, then it's okay with me. Okay.
Yes. Okay. President Sinai.
Just in terms of process, I at least would appreciate the opportunity to raise any things I might want to see back a month from now, tonight.
Oh, absolutely.
So we have an ability to put it out there.
So let me be clear. We are going, once we get past this motion, either way, Greg is going to give us a presentation on this application. So commissioners who may be less familiar than others can have the benefit of hearing about this in a month, frankly, to consider any of the issues that come up and might not be resolved in the next month with the applicant. So I don't mean it just that.
Sorry?
I didn't know if you had any other questions on
No,
the motion.
this is a time for me to
Well,
ask.
let's get through the motion,
Okay.
and then, if that's okay.
Yes.
All right, anyone else on this motion? Okay, we'll vote on the motion to postpone till May 8th. Are we okay? Because if you want to say something, you're welcome to.
I mean,
No,
if we're going
not
to
you.
discuss
I
it
was
tonight, we
looking-
might as well vote, but like but if staff wants to postpone, we can postpone, that's fine with me.
I think that's an accurate characterization of staff's position. Commissioner Zeloff, was there anything else you had?
Well, do I understand that those commissioners who wish to comment are going to do so
Yes.
after the vote?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Or you can, up to you, or you can wait till next month, but you're welcome to do that tonight if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay? All right, the vote is on the motion to postpone. All those in favor, raise your hands, signifying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so it's postponed. Now, Greg, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Okay, so this is a bridge that would directly impact the former WCAU building at 10 Monument Road. Because it is a Class 2 designated property, the Historical Commission could only make comments and recommendations for how to mitigate the design and its impact on this historic resource. First of all, the applicant provided a few renderings of this proposed bridge that would connect the 401 City Avenue property with the 10 Monument Road property. And this you can see on the right is the renovated WCAU building where the canopy over the walkway coming off the bridge would directly interact with the building. So again, while the Commission does not have the ability to recommend conditions for the proposed construction, they did formulate 4 recommendations to mitigate the impact to the resource. First of all, they recommended re-examination of the pattern of the truss, the kind of diagonal members as well as the vertical and horizontal ones in order to lessen the visual impact, to make it blend in a little better with the resource and the surroundings. The second recommendation was to provide landscaping either through street trees or ground plantings that might obscure the transition point. So to basically cover and visually obstruct the giant pylon that would be constructed on that part of the property. And I do have an update as of just this morning. The applicant has revised the design to add some plantings and I think that meets that recommendation. The third was to select one of the proposed site plans which had the bridge coming in and canopy and walkway coming in at a right angle to the building rather than at a diagonal. So the applicant has indicated that they're amenable to going about that preferred plan of the Commission. Number 4 was removing some of the diagonals that aren't actual structural members on the kind of the staircase covering coming down to the building. They felt that this was incongruous with the vertical and horizontal grid on top of the exterior of the WCAU building, and the applicant was amenable to this and provided this revised rendering again just today. So 3 out of 4 of the Commission's recommendations were taken into account in this new revision from the applicant.
Thank you. And let me just say before I open up for questions and comments, I appreciate those revisions. I had noticed, as others might have, I don't want to call the supports obtrusive, but that they kind of stood out. So to the extent they were mitigated in these designs, I think that's very helpful. So, President Sinai.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grimes, and I want to echo your thanks for the revisions. I think I completely understand the need to have a pedestrian bridge over the street to connect these buildings, and I appreciate the constructive approach that was taken with the HC's recommendations. And I just wanted to follow up, and hopefully maybe we could just hear something more a month from now from the architect about the one recommendation that was unable to be addressed. And that recommendation was, if you look at the bridge has diagonal trusses. They kind of look zigzag. The building architecturally is all about these vertical lines, and the diagonals conflict with the vertical lines. They're not very contextual or complementary with it. And the HC said, hey, can you do something about that? And the response of the architect is, well, you need those to keep the bridge from falling down. And so, and that's kind of where it left off. And so the question I have is whether it's possible to do anything visually, not structurally, to help mitigate those diagonals. And I'm not an architect, or other people on this board who are, but like, I leave it up to you to tell us whether there's anything that can be done, whether it's a matter of paint to make the diagonals just look a little darker so they visually recede so the verticals are emphasized, or the diagonals are behind the glass and the verticals are in front of the glass, or anything like that to just help make that visually look.
Hello, I'm Dan Josipovich. I'm from Kaplan Stewart, representing the applicant, and the architect is with me here, Tim Kaiser. He can walk you through those technical questions.
And you're welcome to just say, yeah, we'll think about it, we'll come back with a month, and that's fine too. We're gonna be talking about this a month from now, but I figured I'd raise it now.
Just to hit on a couple of pieces. One, you're correct in that they are inherently required as a part of the structure. The bridge wouldn't support itself otherwise. And because of that, they have to fall in the same plane as the verticals. So shifting them into different planes behind the glass or in front of the plexiglass isn't going to work from a structural perspective. One of the things, while removing them isn't an option, we are planning to work with the structural engineer, Bridge Brothers, who's the design, build, manufacturer of the bridge, to see if the verticals and the horizontals can maintain the specific, in this actual image they're represented as 8x8 tube steel, to see if the diagonals could actually be a different sized member that might be a little thinner. They won't go away, but to try and draw a distinction between them and the verticals and horizontals. So I believe from the ownership side, we're trying to receive approval before the engineering for the bridge gets paid for and greenlit, but during that process, that is our plan to try and achieve a distinction between the verticals and the horizontals.
Okay, great, thank you, I appreciate it. I appreciate the consideration on it. Oh, thank you, Commissioner Grimes.
Oh, okay. Anyone else? Any other commissioner questions, comments? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you next month. Okay, so moving right along. Actually, that completes the building and planning agenda for tonight.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grimes. And with that, we are going to move to the Public Works Committee. I recognize its chair, Commissioner Whalen.
Thank you, President Simon. Chapter 5 of the Administrative Code and Chapter 133, Streets and Sidewalks, for amendments related to the CIP responsibility, permits, and violations. So I will go ahead and just get us started by
moving to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise notice of intent to adopt an ordinance. You guys can all take a break right now, Drake. It's going to be a minute. To amend the code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 5, Administrative Code, Article 10, Finance and Budget, Section 5-54, Capital Programs, to reassign responsibility for the Township's Capital Improvement Program, and Chapter 133, Streets and Sidewalks, Article 1, Encroachments and Obstructions, Article 2, Snow and Ice Removal, Article 3, Right-of-Way Occupancy, Excavation and Use, and Article 4, defective sidewalks and curbs, to amend regulations related to the issuance of certain permits and enforcement of violations. Thank you, Commissioner Gavin, for the second. And can you let us know what this is actually all about?
Yeah, sure. So good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jesse Hunting. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works, and I'm filling in for Director Paul McElhaney this evening. So I'll be discussing the Public Works issue briefing and kind of giving you a little bit of context in terms of what we're approving here. So, you know, part of the reason we're proposing this is general housekeeping to the township's code, and making that code aligned to some of the historic and current responsibilities of the department and the director. In particular, you know, both historically and presently, the Director of Public Works has been responsible for managing the capital improvements program. And so part of what we're proposing here is just to kind of codify that in the code. So it's something we've been doing, and this proposal aims just to clarify that in the township's code. We are also proposing to amend the township's code to aid in the enforcement of obstructions and work that occurs in the right-of-way. In particular, these changes will allow the Department of Public Works the ability to write citations for violations that don't meet the township standards and code. And so examples of this include subpar renovation work that's sometimes done by contractors and utilities. And I'm sure everyone's noticed a large amount of utility work that's been happening around the township. So this will give us the ability to rein some of that subpar work in a little bit. Additionally, this will give us the ability to enforce instances where contractors are doing work without a permit. And then also the ability to enforce or kind of limit some of the contractors who are doing work in the township right away without notifying us. So our thought is that these citations should serve as a deterrent to these contractors by giving the Department of Public Works the ability to assess fees to cover the cost of the permits that contractors are not taking out sometimes, and to deny permits to contractors who have a history of poor or inadequate work that doesn't meet the township standards. And then also the ability to assess fees onto contractors who are doing subpar work and where the township has to come in behind them to remediate that work. So while a lot of this authority is already implied in the code, it's not stated, and so that's what we're hoping to do with this proposal.
Thank you very much. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments? Commissioner Kramer?
Does the Department of Public Works have the staffing to do the enforcement for this?
Yes, we do. We currently have 2 inspectors, and they make rounds on a daily basis out to visit contractor sites and contractors who've pulled permits with the department.
Thank you.
Commissioner Burnham?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I don't know, maybe Manager Mealy, something for you to address. I'm trying to figure out organizationally, and maybe you can explain what goes on now, currently, before we do this, that there's a problem in some location, it's recognized by Public Works or whatever. We also have code enforcement. We were talking about that last week when Ernest Pendleton was here. Would we not have somebody report, here's a violation, have our code enforcement then handle this, as opposed to then having separate groups handling, and I don't know where that dividing line would be, code violations? Probably poorly articulated question that I have, but maybe you can answer it anyway.
I understand what you're asking. Basically, the code enforcement, which works through the Building and Planning Department, their jurisdiction stops at the property line. All of the codes that they enforce, the land development code, the sign code, all of that really stops at the property line. Public Works is really in charge of the right-of-way. So when somebody wants to place an obstruction in the right-of-way, when somebody wants to dig up our streets in the right-of-way, place sidewalks in the right-of-way, all that has to go through Public Works. And that really is the way the system works right now, and as Jesse said, we think some of this authority already existed to perhaps cite those who were doing the wrong things in our right-of-way, but the solicitor had some questions as to whether the code was that clear, so they've worked to clarify the code to make sure it's absolutely clear that, yes, we can write citations for people that are not repairing our streets to code, are not taking out permits when they're opening up our streets, or are placing things in the right-of-way that does not belong.
Boy, can I apply for that job? Are there situations where there are overlaps then between what the building and planning would be doing and what we're describing here with Public Works?
There might be times when there needs to be some coordination. Say somebody comes in with a proposal to build something, and part of that proposal includes placing something into our right-of-way. there you would need two departments to get together there. But most time, the dividing line's pretty clear at the property line.
And then the last thing, somewhat dovetailing on what Commissioner Kramer asked, so a citation's issued, somebody contests it, it could find its way into the, district or municipal court. We have the personnel through Public Works that would go and do that enforcement, or they delegate that to somebody, or a combination thereof?
Now, it would be the Public Works. Public Works has inspectors right now that are out and inspecting work in the right-of-way and inspecting paving in the right-of-way, and it would be those inspectors, along with the Assistant Director of Public Works or the Director of Public Works, who would all have authority to be able to proceed with a case before the District Justice.
So in short, we're not really changing anything, we're just making sure that the code clarifies what's in place is code, in accordance with the code, or the code's in accordance with us.
Making it very clear, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Zoloff.
Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. Jesse, don't go away. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for your presentation. All of what has been outlined is needed, but I need to understand a scenario. So a contractor for a utility does a poor job of repairing a trench. The trench repair is well in advance of the road restoration. Where in here is there increased enforcement? The Public Works inspector says to the contractor, you need to redo this, they don't do it. So what's new in here?
So, I mean, what this does, okay, all right, yeah, sure.
So Commissioner Zeloff, one of the things that this does is add teeth, right? So if a utility contractor does restoration work, they put in a trench on a road and it's subpar, we give them the opportunity to come back and fix it.
Right.
If they don't,
right,
or if they do and it's still subpar, we now have the ability to go out and do it ourselves and charge them for it. So that any costs incurred by the township for making up for the failure of the utility and their contractor to fix it to our expectations, we would then be able to contract it out ourselves and pass the bill on to the utility company who has failed to uphold the conditions of their permit to restore the roadway.
Okay.
And/or issue a citation.
That's what I want to hear. I want to hear about the citation, because Public Works going in and doing it ourselves is a big step, right? And we get a 10% premium. I think we could argue for a higher premium. But where's the citation mechanism in here?
The citation is the first step, right? So if they fail to do the job properly, they get cited for it. And they're told to come back and do it again. And if they don't...
And is the citation in Section D where it says, no more than $600 for each offense on page 8?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so that's already here. That's not changed.
That is not changed, but we add the condition of us allowing to go and do the work and pass the bill. So it's an added step to take it on. Because what we find ourselves in now with some of the road work is that we're issuing the citations and they're either not coming back or they're waiting to come back or they're coming back and they're subpar work regardless. And we issue another citation and then we ask them to come back. So we kind of eliminate that loop. And we give them a certain extent after issuing citations that we are then allowed to go and do the work and pass the bill along.
But we are currently issuing citations. We'll continue to do so, and if they're not acted on, then they are pursued with the local district justice or become enforceable because they haven't been contested.
Correct. That part doesn't change. This revision clarifies it and strengthens it. So.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Seeing none, do we have any questions from the public? Seeing none, Jody, do we have anybody online?
Everyone is going online.
All right. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, that passes unanimously. And President Sinai, that concludes the business for tonight.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Whalen. The next committee is the Library Committee, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you very much. We have one item on the agenda this evening, and that is for authorizing a grant application for the creation of a reading garden at Penn Wynn. And Brandon, could you tell us more?
Absolutely, Commissioner. What the commissioners have before them tonight is a request to adopt a resolution which would authorize the township to submit a grant application to the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources Community Conservation Partnership Program, the C2P2 program, on behalf of Penn Wynn Library to partially finance the construction of a reading garden at the library. This request is before you because we received a request from Penn Wynn Library to apply to this program, and this grant program only allows municipalities to apply. So Penn Wynn Library Association could not apply by themselves, and that they would need the township, if the board were inclined, to apply on their behalf. And this is a similar type of situation as the board previously considered with the Union Fire Association, where the township did apply for a grant for renovations to their firehouse. It would be structured in a similar fashion if the board were inclined to adopt such a resolution. The resolution requests $141,370 from the state to go towards the project, which represents 50% of the overall project cost, with the remaining 50% of the project cost to be provided by the Penn Wynn Library Association. It is my understanding that they have obtained a grant from the state senator's office and are willing to contribute the balance from private donations and from the Library Association themselves. We do have representatives from the library here tonight if the board has any questions about the project or any of the financing sources.
I also understand that we gave a $50,000 fund so that, this 141,000 is pretty much a matching fund, and that from Senator Capoletti and the township has already amassed that amount of money, or close to it. Is that my understanding?
So I believe you're referring to the Vitality Grant Program. The money that the township awarded Penn Wynn Library for the reading garden through that ARP grant program was to finalize the plans and the bid documents so that the Library Association could then go and bid this project out. So the money awarded through the Vitality Grant Program isn't for construction, it's to finalize the design and all of the documentations that they would need to go and do the construction.
Great. Any questions from fellow commissioners? Seeing none. Audience, are there any comments in our audience? Nothing but hopeful stares. Jody, is there anyone online that would like to comment on this? Seeing none, I would ask that we go to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
I think you need to make a motion.
I'm sorry, you are absolutely right. I do need, I'm usually a stickler on these things. Let me make a motion, consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, adopt a resolution authorizing the township to submit a grant application in the amount of $141,370 to the Pennsylvania DCNR Community Conservation Partnership Program C2P2 grant to partially fund the creation of a reading garden at Penn Wynn Library. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. Now, any further questions? Seeing none, I'll go to the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand, say aye. Anyone saying nay or any, none? You're shaking your hands. It passes unanimously. And that concludes the business of our library committee.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Churchill. So we are through 5 of the 7 committee meetings. I have to say the bottom of the batting order is crushing it tonight. And we're going to move right to grants and community development. And I recognize it's Vice Chair.
There is no shame in batting 8 or whatever.
Yes, Commissioner Gabbard.
We are almost there. We're at the penultimate meeting for tonight. We have one item on the agenda, which is an authorization to issue a letter of support to the Philadelphia Skating Club. And let's go. Brandon, you want to take us away?
Thank you, Commissioner. More grant work, right? The township received a request from the Philadelphia Skating Club. It is the club's intention to submit a grant application on their own, with them being the applicant, to the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development COVID-19 ARP Multi-Purpose Community Facilities Program. Had to practice that one. And that is for a multi-stage, multi-million-dollar facility improvement that they would like to undertake at their facility in Ardmore. There's no funds being requested from the township. If the board is inclined, this is just the issuance of a letter of support that the club can include in their application to the state. We do have representatives from the club here tonight if you have any questions regarding the request or their project in general.
Great, thank you, Brandon, and thank you for sticking with us for so long, much appreciated. I will start this by making a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the issuance of a letter of support to the Philadelphia Skating Club and Humane Society for a COVID-19 ARPA Multi-Purpose Community Facilities Program grant application. Do I have a second? Thank you. Who should we do? You? No, Commissioner Rossman. All right, we'll give it to you. We'll give you that second. Any comments or questions? All right, Commissioner Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I rise in support of this letter of support for this skating club. They have done a lot of work behind the scenes, particularly in the Ardmore community the last few years. They have had open skates for the community. They have did outreach with partners in the community, and now they've been working diligently to raise funds to preserve the structure, and I think that it is an asset to our community, and I hope everyone will be on board. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other, can't remember who else had their hands raised. Commissioner Zella.
To follow on Commissioner Stevenson, this is a remarkable facility, a engineering marvel, the first of its kind. It is a tremendous amenity in the township. Olympic skaters have come from this facility. It is historic and it needs help, so we should be supportive.
Great, thank you very much. Any other comments? Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you very much. Just for the sake of transparency, one of my neighbors indicated that this group also has a private membership component. And I checked with our township manager, Mr. McNeely, to see if that was some kind of conflict or not. And he indicated that they have a nonprofit 503, help me out here. So that he did not see where that was a conflict, but I just wanted to, for the sake of transparency, share that with the board.
Thank you, Commissioner Churchill. Any other comments? All right, I'll just make a quick comment. Coming from a family of skaters, we've been there plenty of times, and it is a wonderful facility. Thank you for everything you guys do. I know in the memo, it says, in the past, the township has issued letters of support for grant applications submitted by non-township entities that act to further our township goals. And it is a wonderful facility within our township. It's something we should be proud of and thrilled that it's part of our township. So I wholeheartedly support this. And seeing no more comments on the board, any comments from the public? Anyone? If you wish to make a comment, please come up. If not, you don't have to. I'm guessing there's no comments online. Thank you to our secretary. So we will call a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? I would say shame on you. So no one's opposed, and therefore this passes unanimously, and we can go to the final meeting of the evening. Whoever's batting last.
Okay. Thank you very much,
The new guy.
Commissioner Gavin, and you know, we often put like the speedy batter batting ninth, like roll into going first. And so I'm going to recognize Commissioner Woodring for the Administrative and Human Resources Committee.
Thank you, President Sinai. We have 2 items on the agenda this evening. The first is going to be the approval of Township Manager's employment agreement and 2024 salary increase. And to start, I'm going to put a motion on the table. That motion is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to execute the Township Manager's employment agreement for the period of January 2nd, 2024 through January 5th, 2026, and approval of a salary increase of 3.5% effective January 1st, 2024. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. I'll open it up for any comments from the committee to start. President Sinai.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Woodring. Just to say a couple words. The first is just a word about process. We have a township manager. The township manager has a contract that gets renewed every 2 years. The contract basically says the manager serves at will. He can step down any time. I think any given week, we are grateful that he does not do that.
Don't tell him.
He must stay here. And so we are renewing that employment agreement this year, and also approving a salary increase. And just for explanation, the way every year the board evaluates the performance of the 2 people who report directly to the board, Manager McNeely and then our township secretary, Jody Kelly, and we do it by all of us filling out evaluations, compiling them, aggregating them, discussing the performance, sharing the results of those evaluations with the staff, in giving feedback. Like in previous years, this township is fortunate to have an outstanding township manager. And I've been doing this long enough that I feel like I've said this before, so I'm going to say it again because as if it's new, which is we're extremely lucky. We're doing things this year. You can see this evening discussing a lot of really exciting improvements in this township. Things that we get to do because the rest of the township just runs really, really well, right? All by itself, right? We are backfilling fire apparatus. Fire service is doing tremendously well. We are talking about making sure that the paving of our streets is up to standards. But the streets are always plowed and they're always paved. And the trash is always picked up. And the police do outstanding jobs, including as we've seen this week with what the police has done. And financially, we're in terrific shape. As you can see, as we're having discussion with the solid waste fees and not the solid waste fees, the sewer fund, which is overfunded, right? Just because we've had good fiscal management throughout the years. So we're extremely fortunate in that, and we're fortunate therefore to have a township manager who not only just kind of seems like naturally just makes the engine purr, but gives us the ability to do what this board, I think we all came here to want to do, which is to think really ambitiously about leading the township. And so I cannot imagine having a better township manager. I'm grateful for Manager McNeely and happy to support the salary increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more committee comments?
What he said.
All right.
Jeremiah, can I add just one thing that, I was on the committee that selected Ernie those 10 years ago. And one of the things we said to Ernie when we said we'd like you to be our manager and we'd like you to live here, he said, I was already planning to move here if selected. He lives in our community. He knows what we want. He knows what this community is like. And that was not always the case with his predecessors. So it makes a huge difference that he lives here and is part of this community, and we greatly appreciate that. And of course, all the things that President Sinai said, and then some, are true about Ernie's dedication and work for us. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, with that, I'll call it to a vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstentions? Secretary, that passes unanimously.
Thank you, commissioners.
You're welcome.
On to our second item, that is the approval of the 2024 salary increase for the Township Secretary. And I will start this with making another motion. The motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a 2024 salary increase of 3.5% for the Township Secretary effective January 1st, 2024. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Gavin. Open it up for comments from the committee as well. President Sinai.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Woodring. I'll go again. So I think the consensus of the board when we discussed Secretary Kelly was that one should not confuse being a township secretary with a little t and a little s with being the secretary of the township with a capital S and a capital T. In that the word secretary with a capital S does not begin to convey all the many, many things that Jody Kelly does. And if, there is the metaphors are all bad, right? So like if the manager is the one who keeps the engine purring, then Secretary Kelly is like the gas and the oil that makes it go, right? She's the glue that holds everything together, and she is tireless and is always on call. And she has to deal with the other 13 people. I'm a sweetheart, but like the other 13, more and more power to her. Thank you for continuing to serve. I'm happy to support the salary increase.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Woodring. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Zoloff?
Commissioner Woodring, Jody Kelly didn't move here. She started here. She grew up in our township. She's always lived in our township. She knows this community. She knows us. And she does a wonderful job as our township secretary. And it is not an appropriate name for the work she does, but I think that's what the code requires. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Awesome. Well, if I could just make a closing comment then. I'm honored to have Jody as actually one of my neighbors in Belmont Hills, so I'm always thankful for everything. And to our township manager, I think over these past 3 and change months, I've had a lot of questions, and it seems like every week I'm learning something new from one of them. So I just want to thank you both for that, because the onboarding process here has been just absolutely incredible. And so very honored to serve on this board with you both in the township staff. So.
Thank you.
With that, I'll call to a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. President Sinai, that concludes business of the Administration and Human Resources Committee.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Woodring. And before we adjourn, Commissioner Churchill has asked to make an announcement.
Yes, I saw where Brandon Ford has left the building, but I just want to give a shout out to him.
He's over there.
Where? Oh, there you go. Never mind.
He's hiding over there.
He was instrumental in putting this grant for the reading garden at the Penguin Library. So I just wanted to thank him personally for all the work that he did. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for.
Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your comments.
Thank you for everything you do.